and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the continuation of the UKSimRacing community's GT3 League Season 9, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks the return from the mid-season break, and with it the commencement of round 5 of 8, as our drivers head to Germany for the Nürburgring GP-Strecke circuit. And well, what a fanciful circuit for our drivers to get back underway, and the ultimate test of racing momentum as they make their way into the second half of the season. Of course, last time out, 2 weeks ago, we wrapped up with what was our first endurance race round of the season, and there we saw it was all about strategy and outright pace over the course of the entirety of the race, which boded well for many. And indeed, it was the rise of Håkon Grebstad who took the run of strategy to take the win overall. But of course, with a break, it does mean that our drivers had an opportunity to calm down, to call to rest, and therefore they'll all be coming back tonight swinging and looking to have that momentum on their side as they look to carry on from where they left off and make sure their championship campaigns get back to the right foot from straight on the outset. But as our drivers get set in the background, currently in their final practice session, let's take you through a little bit of housekeeping. This broadcast is being brought to you live by the official UKSimRacing YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com and search for UKSimRacing, you can tune in there. We do say hello to all you guys and girls tuning in at home using the official chats, of course. And don't be shy, feel free to say hi. We don't bite here at UKSimRacing. All are welcome. In the commentary booth, you have myself. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And I'll be bringing you all of your racing action over the course of tonight, indeed the remainder of the season. But speaking of the season, let's look to our calendar so far and what still lies in wait. And we can see here that now that we've moved into the second half of the season, for today is the 12th of February and it's the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. Before today, we had back in round number 1, all the way back at the beginning on the 8th of January, the commencement of the season at Silverstone, the Grand Prix circuit of Silverstone, in the heart of the United Kingdom, indeed the heart of British motorsport. And there we saw our drivers get off to a flying start in an absolutely classic sprint. One forward a week, we went our way across the Atlantic Ocean to the state of Florida in the United States of America for the Daytona Road Course circuit, and there saw it was all about the draft and being smart with the passes, and indeed the sneaking through to take the win in the elite class and overall of Ryan Moles, who just picked his teammate Daniel Thomas from Protect Motorsport to the finish line by the smallest of margins. And that sprint was on the 15th of January, and then we made our way from one Citadel speed to the ultimate tempo speed in the heart of Europe, and that was at the Italian circuit of Monza, of course, the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza, whereby our drivers down the 22nd of January had to keep it smart and keep it cool in the draft, and also be wise in the multiple chicanes. And well, we didn't have too many incidents at Monza, particularly on turn number 1, lap number 1, but we did see the race proceed with some incidents later on, and those incidents led to the rise of many a driver through the field. But then that last time out in round number 4, it was at the French circuit at the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours, where we had our first endurance race round. And whilst our sprints are 45 minutes in length, our endurance race round was 90 minutes in nature, and therefore with a combined nature of 2 or 3 stops being on the strategic card, it was the fuel-saving 2 stop, which boded very well for Håkon Grebstad and also for Daniel Lee, the 2 drivers there in the elite class, really making it work to their advantage. And also we saw the rise in what was the pro class of none other than John Eddowes, who jumped up into lead of the championship with a strategic blinder combined with absolutely blinding pace as the race went on. But now, after our break week, we're here today for round number 5 in Germany, and after this round we're making our way down under to Australia for Mount Panorama Raceway, but you know it more commonly as Bathurst, and that'll be on the 19th of February before round number 7 commences in Sao Paulo, Brazil, on the South American continent there in our final sprint of the season, and that'll be on the 26th of February. And then after the Interlagos circuit, we make our way back to the United States of America for none other than the classic Sebring circuit on the 5th of March. We bring the curtain down in our second and final endurance round of the season, and that'll be at round number 8. But still plenty to go, plenty of questions unanswered. Indeed, all 3 championships, whether it be the elite, the pros, all 30 the AMs, all completely open at the moment in terms of who are the potential favourites, given the fact that we have seen a muddling of results over the course of the first 4 rounds, and we hope that do continues, of course, to keep things wide open. Nobody yet has made themselves the firm favourite in any of the 3 classes. But coming from our calendar to our circuit for today, it is none other, as it's known in full, than the Nürburgring GP-Strecke, or the Grand Prix circuit in full, and located near the town of Nürburgring in Germany, perhaps overshadowed by its neighbouring Nordschleife loop. It is the younger loop of the Nürburgring circuit compared to its Eiffel Mountains cousin. But this circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided us by iRacing.com, and thank you to them for their circuit maps and also their wonderful simulator, this is a circuit which is not to be underestimated. Consists of 16 corners, the trick of this circuit is that you have to be the master of the art of dancing your car in between the corner sequences, because there's not too many straights, and with the limited straights that are available, they're short in length, and therefore you need the ultimate run out of the final corner of each corner sequence to get the charge into the next set of corners. Get it right, you may be battling on the brakes into the next corner. Get it wrong, however, you may find yourself vulnerable and falling back into your peers behind. And as our drivers make the way in the charge down the start-finish straight down towards turn number 1 into the Yokohama curve, they'll head hard on the brakes into one of the slowest corners on the circuit as they drop through the depression of the turn 1 apex curve and then rise their way into the AMG Mercedes arena. Going into turn 2, it's a blind crest as they roll their way through the left-hander, but as they descend out to turn 2, they'll brake hard into turn 3, looking to trail brake as late as possible into the corner apex before bringing the car over to the left-hand side to attack turn number 4, the close right-hander. Exit out turn 4, it's the kink of 5 as they make their way on through before charging down towards turn number 6, and there in the fast hitting section of turn 6 and 7, the left into right sequence, the average apex speed rises slightly, but the overtaking opportunities become quite confined given there's only really one way through. But as they make their way out of turn 7, there's another short stretch, and that's where we could see some overtakes in the run down the hill towards the Goodyear hairpin, and that's the lowest point on the circuit as our drivers descend down to the braking zone, look to take the V-shaped apex and then get on the power as soon as possible, because then they need to charge their way up through the Michael Schumacher S. Of course, named after the infamous Formula 1 driver, the 7-time world champion, our drivers will charge their way through the left-right and make their way up towards Ravenel curve, also known as turn number 11. And as they come into the left-hander at turn 11, they'll need to set themselves up nicely as this pair of corners, turns 11 and 12, are quite similar to turns 6 and 7, albeit reversed. And as they make their way out of 11, they'll bring themselves hard over to the left to attack the Bilstein curve at 12, before getting back on the power and charging it down through the kink of 13, the Advent Bergen corner, to make their way up towards the Vidal chicane. Now, because we are running the standard Grand Prix circuit, we're not going to be having the World Endurance version of the chicane, which is the faster version. Instead, we have got the official Formula 1 Grand Prix version, while drivers will be tacking that down into the slow chicane, and that will really open up some major opportunities where we could see some very good passes under braking, while drivers try to outbox one another with the braking retardation. But as they make the way through the left into right there, Vidal, they'll come out of turns 14 and 15 up into the Hyundai N curve at turn number 16. Recently changed the name of the corner, and as they make the way out of 16, they'll go on to the next lap. But with it being a highly technical circuit, we're expecting it is all going to be about those who thrive at certain corners and circuits whereby they are put to the test in being able to balance the weight transfer of the car and also keep the car pointed in a straight line as much as possible. This is not a circuit for the faint-hearted. And just before we go racing, of course, to give you a quick recap of our rules and regulations, we can see here that in terms of car setup, our car fuel loads have been restricted to 45% for all races, and what that will mean, as you'll see a little bit later on, is it does mandate a pit stop in the sprint races. Now, in terms of qualifying, a lone qualifying format shall be used, and what does that mean in simple English? All of our drivers take to an instance of the circuit where they are alone on circuit. They do not have any of their fellow competitors out on circuit, and with over 35 drivers expected to be in attendance today, you can imagine if we did have 35 GT3s out on circuit, it would get very cramped. So therefore, this gives all of our drivers an opportunity to put in a set of clean laps to get themselves set up on the grid. Now, drivers have 4 laps or 15 minutes, whichever passes first, to set the best possible time. We should point out there that's 4 fast laps plus also the 1 out lap that precedes them. And with regards to the sprint race, once they all line up, the race shall commence via a double-fold rolling start, as is the tradition in this league, and there are no mandatory pit stop requirements. But given the 45% fuel load, we are not expecting anybody to make it to the end of the race unscathed on fuel capacity unless they do come into the pits at some point to take a quick splash and dash. There are no fast repairs available either, so if drivers are involved in a major incident, they will need to either be towed back to the pits or they'll need to limp back and take the repair work, and the driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. But that's enough rules and regulation. I know what you're all here for. Well, indeed, I'm here for the racing as well. And as we look to our live pictures here, let's take you through our schedule for tonight. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time at UTC. Well, in just under 7 minutes time, we head into our 15-minute qualifying session with all our drivers looking to go full attack over the course of the entirety of the circuit and look to get themselves set up as high as possible on the grid, and then we'll make our way to the grid for the sprint race, 45 minutes in duration, and that is expected to kick off at approximately 8:15 this evening. But what a thriller we do have on our hands, with a rather light ambient temperature at the moment of 18 degrees centigrade, and with regards to the track temperature at 19 degrees centigrade, we are not expecting temperature to be too much of a factor here, but instead it is going to give our drivers the ultimate opportunity to really push themselves as much as possible. And well, speaking about pushing themselves, the things for our drivers they do have to keep in mind as well is that a number of our drivers here have recently competed in the Bathurst 12 hours on iRacing, and that may just offer up some opportunities today with some tired arms and legs to drivers who did not compete in the Bathurst 12 hours to be able to really capitalise and seize on some tiredness or weariness of some other drivers. But as we see Damien Lobbett making his way down into turns 6 and 7, rolling his way on through. looking good so far, and well, currently the fastest man out there with regards to the times as he rolls on through. And we do say hello there to, in the YouTube chat, Martin Tilling, who is racing today. And in fact, we can see Martin Tilling currently in the pit lane there, parked on up in the Tiki SimSport Corpo machine, and I do believe that is Tiki-chan on the side of the car in a throwback to Japanese anime culture. And well, the characterization there at Tiki SimSport on the side of the car, albeit we're quite a way away from the vehicle, so you can't see it in full spectral glory, but in the BMW M4, as we see Tilling making his way out of the pit lane there. We also say hello to BRM Sim Racing and also to the Bad Gamer Zero. And well, I can see at Bad Gamer there, all set for great racing. Looking forward to the broadcast, and that's great to see. And if you are tuning in, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. As I say, all the more is merrier. But I can tell you one thing right now, the one man who is merry going into tonight is Daniel Thomas, the ProTech Motorsport driver in the Audi R8 GT3, the Welshman in the 60 machine, currently the championship leader in the elite class. And well, he is in a dead heat with none other than Håkon Grebstad. And well, Grebstad right now parked up in the pit lane as Thomas loses it. Coming out of turn number 2, won't make that mistake in qualifying or the race, but indeed that catching out quite severely. But as we see him having to return to the pits very shortly, we do instead look to Sam Sherwood, fellow ProTech Motorsport driver, and well, it is the rivalry between Thomas and Grebstad at the very top. But the man you can't count out with regards to being up there or trying to creep his way up there is this man, currently P13 in this practice session in the elite class there, as you can see on the time down the left hand side of your screen, Daniel Lee. Now, he's not been the man who's been the fastest in qualifying sessions. We can't give him that accolade, but what we can give him the accolade of is he finds some miracle way every time he qualifies well down the order to finish inside the top 5 as a minimum, if not on the podium of the elite class. We saw it, of course, at Daytona. We saw it last time out in Magny-Cours. Daniel Lee seems to be the man with the master plan every time. Well, indeed, he has a plan, unlike you could say the Ferrari Formula 1 team of recent years, where their strategic calls have left us all bemused. But it does seem as though the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo driver really has mastered the art of it. If it doesn't go well in qualifying, he finds a way to make it work in the race, and that's why he is the lurking threat, currently P3 in the elite class championship, and could definitely put an upset in if he's able to find a little bit more qualifying pace. He's definitely one of the outside contenders right now to really spring a trap on the championship leaders. But it's not just about the elite class, of course. We also do look to the pro class, and here is your championship leader of Tiki SimSport Kimmy's John Eddowes in the BMW M4 GT3, the number 70 car, as he just rolls the car to a halt there to let drivers come on through as they make their way around on a fast laps in this practice session. But Eddowes, the man who really rose to fame and glory last time out at Magny-Cours, and can he continue that run of form tonight, of course, with that win, which has given him an advantage of 7 points over Edward Knight. Well, Edward Knight right now in the pit lane, we can't quite see him, but definitely parked on up. But given the fact we've only got 13 points separating Eddowes from 4 of his other peers, including what is Peter Cox, Alex Gaines, and Nathan Scott and Edward Knight, you can imagine that for Eddowes, it really is the case that he cannot afford to let the gas off a single second, because at any moment the pro class could completely invert in terms of who's leading inside that top 5. And you also do have outsiders such as Dion Brent outside the top 5, the privateer hit in the Audi R8, and they're not to be forgotten about as well. They're all nipping on the heels of the top 5 and all looking fast in equal measure. But if we talk about the elites and the pros, we would be loath to not talk about the AM class. And well, in the AM class, our first double winner in terms of repeat winner in the AM class was announced last time at Magny-Cours, and it was none other than Aaron McGregor, who finally made it 2 wins in 4 races. And the number 51 driver, the privateer there from AMR, that's Aaron McGregor Racing, as he makes his way down through turn number 7, definitely finding a way to put in a big upset for all the drivers and the rest of the field, being the only driver to finish on the lead lap in the AM class in terms of that overall lead lap finishing position, and therefore really leaving everybody with jaw-dropping moments with regards to how fast he was. But he looks to be the favourite right now in terms of pace, but we have seen this AM class has swung so much in terms of momentum, and indeed it would be rude of us not to point out that Casper Brotner, who's currently parked up in the pit lane, we can't see him at the moment, the Ferrari driver, Casper Brotner, has jumped his way up into P2 with a very strong and consistent set of results. He really has been Mr. Consistent, but we've also got a big set of names such as Adrian Kukulas here, who we see the privateer from the US of A making his way down towards turn of 1 in the Porsche 911 GT3R, and was spoiled of a result a couple of rounds ago, and indeed spoiled last time Magny-Cours, a major incident wounding him in terms of his aspirations. He's also one there who's right up in terms of pace in the AM class, and also we can see the top man there, Darren Sharples, who really has been the man to beat in qualifying, and that's why all 3 of our classes are so wide open. As we make our way into where it's qualifying in just under a minute's time, we just like to take a minute to tell you that if you have been a long-time follower of UK Sim Racing, if you've been enjoying the broadcast and you've been enjoying all the leagues we do put on, and you've ever wondered how you can support UK Sim Racing as a community, did you know there is a quick way to do so via our affiliates? For UK Sim Racing is affiliated with Motorsport, Sim Racing and Real World Motorsport companies, including Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere and Demon Tweaks. And if you do head to our website, that's uksimracing.co.uk today, which has recently been revamped in its design. It's no longer in maintenance. As you can see here, there unfortunately isn't a page at the moment where you can go to see who our affiliates are, but you can see there is a link in the top right of the screen, which is to our Discord, and our affiliates do provide discount codes which are available in our official UK Sim Racing Discord. So if you do click on the Discord button, you'll be taken to our Discord, sign up today, and therefore you can be part of the community, and also you can make the most of those affiliate links. And why would you want to? Well, if you use any of those affiliate discount codes, or those links if you will, then it means that you are able to make purchases which are discounted for you as the consumer, and it's because it will be resulting in a kickback to us, and we are a non-profit organisation at UK Sim Racing. Then all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series, including of course the GT3 League, the ongoing Porsche Cup, and we've got plenty more planned for 2023. Then do remember, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UK Sim Racing. And speaking of things that are planned right now, where it's planned for our drivers to go into qualifying, and who has the master plan to be on pole come the end of it in their respective class, well, let's find out as we return to our live pictures here. And qualifying is now underway, and we're everybody having the isolated instance of the circuit here, as we do see a couple of drivers getting themselves set in the pit lane, others already making their way out onto the circuit. And the question you may be asking at this point is, what does it take to have a strong qualifying lap around here? Well, there's two key things you need to have at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. In terms of the setup of the car, you need a car here which is able to handle direction change comfortably. This is a circuit which has corners in very quick succession, but they are clustered. And you see then the Mercedes Arena turns 1 through to 4, and we've just seen Daniel Thomas emerge from turn 4 through the kink of 5. You need that ability to be able to dance the rear end of the car around from left to right and not have to worry about the car potentially overstepping on the back of experiencing what we call oversteer on turning or on the brakes into the next corner. But on top of that as well, you as a driver need the ability to have that confidence that once you clear corner apex, you know how to get the power back on. And indeed, to go with the car, in terms of setup, you need a relative preload differential setup, which is essentially how the two tyres, the left and the right side tyres, respond to one another. When you try to put the throttle down, you need a preload differential, which gives you that confidence to get back on the power as soon as possible and power out those corners and rocket up to the next set of corners with speed. Because with the straights being so short around here, therefore straight speed time is critical in terms of every mile per hour you can gain run out towards the Schumacher S chicane, for example, or the run up towards Vidal. That can be critical and net you a couple of extra attempts. And well, if you find those two aspects going hand in hand and get them right, then you may find yourself right up there at the very front of the field. But what will not help, as we can see here for Adrian Kulas, is when it goes wrong at the Mercedes Arena, he turns it back around there, and thankfully that is on his warm-up lap, so it is going to cook the tyres a little bit, but it does give him a little bit of a breather here. And remember, we do have 15 minutes. Our drivers do not have to rush to get these laps in. They will be required to go round on their warm-up lap and do a warm-up lap with a specific time delta, otherwise they'll be considered to be wasting time effectively, and therefore they'll be asked to come back into the pits and do it again at the cost of what will be one of their fast laps. But for our drivers, they'll be all right now, just getting themselves set, working with their warm-up lap deltas, getting those tyres heated up, and then going on to their first flying laps. But as they come on through, we say hello there to Sean Zion. I do believe that's how I pronounce your surname, sir. If not, I do apologise. And also to Jacob Szymanski, and good evening to you, Jacob. Hope you're doing well as well. But as we see here, Simon Hartley making his way into the final corner, losing the rear end there. The rear just coming on round, and again, just not enough grip in the rear at the moment, and perhaps running a little bit less rear wing, but he's had to go to the pits as a result. But we do have, and we should point out, we have two drivers who are new today. One driver who you have seen on the championship standings, albeit he's yet to make his debut in the series, and that is this man here, Darren Fellows, as he makes his way down through turn 6 into 7 in the BDM Racing Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. And we look forward to seeing how Fellows gets on. Indeed, if any of you are Porsche Cup fans, you know that he does compete in the current Porsche Cup season. But as he makes his way down towards the hairpin of turn number 8 right now, well, we'll have to see how he fits in with regards to the field. He is a very fast driver in his own right, and can he make that work to his advantage today? And we also do have in the AM class, going from our Pro Drive to the AM class, newcomer to the series, signed up in the mid-season break, and that is Erik Stigen. As you can see here, him making his way up the hill, and I do believe he hails from Norway, unless I'm mistaken, and the number 81 driver also in the Ferrari GT3 Evo. But as he makes his way up towards turn number 11, one of the other things you do need to watch out for today, as we wish both fellows and Stigen the best of luck on their debuts, is that a lot of our drivers may have changed their cars, because we do allow drivers to make a car swap after the midway point of the season without penalty, and therefore we could see some new machinery taken to the circuit today. And one example of that is Mark Johnson, who makes his way out into circuit here in what is there, the Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo. And as he comes on down towards what is their turn number 8, an interesting choice of machine here, very power orientated car, a very aggressive car with regards to its power deployment, coming out of second gear, or first gear, but more so second gear, which is what our drivers will typically be using. And Johnson, normally famed for driving in the Porsche 911 GT3R, the car that boded in very well, of course, in Season 8 of the GT3 League. We've decided to switch things up and go for the Mercedes. And is it the right call? That will be the question. It will be hope, and the answer is yes as of tonight. But as we're starting to get some lap times come on the board, we can already see that in our respective classes. That Danielson was setting the provisional pole lap in the elite class of what is a 56.310. Meanwhile, in the pro class, Edo's there with 57.403, and Casper Brotner in the AM class of 57.828. Not too much of a delta there between the classes, to be fair. Only really in the region of what is 4 tenths between the elite and the pro. A whole second currently between the pro and the AMs, and that's about right given the relative gauge of pace that we've seen over the course of the season. But we, of course, do sometimes get those statistical outliers. But as Johnson makes his way out to the final corner, we jump on board here to give you a lap in the Mercedes AMG. Making his way down towards turn 1, dashboard on the bottom right, from the carry an eye of where his gearing and speed are. And as he makes his way into the braking zone here, looks to his left hand side for his brake marker and brakes just before the 100 metre board. They're coming all the way down. He's got a bit deep under braking, however, and slides the car loose. And well, for Johnson, that's not the way you want to do it there. Just not enough braking power in the car, but he gets it back together as he comes into 2. But I think those tyres are definitely scorched as he makes his way through 2 and down into 3 here. And well, for Johnson, he'll be looking to now calm things down quite a bit as he comes from 3 into 4. Through the Mercedes arena he goes, very tight to the apex of 4 there, and I think just trying to get the car reset as he makes his way up towards 6. We'll jump away from Johnson there with the compromised lap, and we'll jump on board with one of our other drivers who will very shortly be making their way onto a lap. But already Johnson making a bit of an error, just carrying a bit too much speed for his expectation into the turn 1 hairpin braking zone. And well, normally on low fuel drives we'll be braking at about 110 metres from corner apex, and Johnson with the right braking point, I think just carrying a little bit too much heavy weight in the back of the car. In fact, in the front of the car, we could say, with the engine placement at the front. But as we look here to Ryan Moles, delicately making his way through turns at 6 and 7, just very sensitive on the throttle with the Audi R8. Of course, the car that's got quite the loose rear end on it, and indeed seen as a very strong car currently in the GT3 balance performance used on iRacing. But it is one of those cars that can very easily catch you out if you don't respect the fact that the mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain does love to sway, and they're going a bit wide. In fact, that's going to be a toe to the pits. As meanwhile, we see Dean Powell making his way down towards turn 1 in the BMW AM4 at the other end of the spectrum, perhaps the most stable car out of the roster of cars available to our drivers. A very front engine rear wheel drive embodiment of car, in terms of the fact this car really feels like it's all about that front end and how much understeer it takes into corners. But the return is, when you do get that power down coming through corners, the BMW does very little to become unplanted. If anything, it just wants to understeer a little bit more. But as we see here, Powell rolling his way through turns 3 and 4, he'll have tried to set the car up, of course, to give himself some extra rotation. And looking quite comfortable right now as he heads out of the Mercedes arena and down towards turn number 6. But as he comes on through, we do have the opportunity to see Daniel Lee coming out of the final corner. And in fact, we jump on board here with the elite driver P3 in the championship as he makes his way down towards turn 1. And we get a reference lap from him with regards to how you take on the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. Braking there 110 metres into turn 1, using a full whip and turning in there for a symmetrical apex. Powering out in first gear, now over to the right for turn 2, keeping the throttle in and then just braking very gently, dropping down to 65 miles an hour before powering out into 3. As he comes on down, he notices he starts to point the car in early. He wants to get as much apex curve as possible, ride the curve, keep the car to the left and swing it into the right hander of 4, clatter over the curving, keep 2 wheels on the white line. And as he makes his way out, an absolutely pinpoint precise run of the Mercedes arena. Now into turn 6, use the escape road on the right as your brake marker as he comes on down to 3rd gear, brings the car over to left for turn number 7, drops to 2nd nice and early, hits an early apex, gets on the power there, taps the curve, however it pushes the car a little bit wide, but he carries on as he makes his way down down towards turn number 8. The first mistake a lap there, just taking that slight tap of the curb, and it breaks the car up as he breaks his way down to turn number 8, breaks it for a V-shaped apex, essentially wanting to go a bit deep, so that way he comes back nice and aggressively, and on the power here as he abuses the preload differential and makes his way up into Schumacher S. Fourth gear, a little lift of the throttle there to set the car in, and as he makes his way between the two apexes, straight lining up, now up into fifth gear, getting ready for turn number 11. Looks to his right for his brake mark at the 100-metre board. Coming down to third gear, plenty of apex curve, lets the car run out, brings it back over to left in third gear, lifts off the throttle there, perhaps a dab of the brake to get the rear brake bias to rotate the car in. And as he makes his way out of turn 12, now charging up towards Vidal here, flat out for the kink of 13. And as he comes on through up to fifth gear, won't quite be reaching sixth gear, or will he, as he gets ready to brake. In fact, goes up to sixth and brakes at the 100-metre board, then down to second gear, clatters over the curve, straight lines between them, having the suspension set up right there to take the curves aggressively, up to third, now braking into the Hyundai N curve as he comes on through and goes a bit deep there. In fact, he compromises the end of this lap to go again by going overly deep there to get the straight line speed. Let's do it as a lovely reference lap there from Daniel Lee as he makes his way onto another lap, and well, whether he can find himself a bit higher than P5, that is to be regarded right now as he heads down into turn number 1. But meanwhile, we look to the AM class, and it's Aaron McGregor who's come firing out of the box here with regards to his laps, and has currently put it on pole in the AM class by almost half a second over Darren Sharples at 57.278, currently half a second off of the pole lap in the pro class. So we are now starting to see our AMs really unleash their pace, and in particular McGregor seemingly going all in as he does a little bit of bobbing and weaving there. And well, this is his third flying lap, so he'll only have one more lap available to him after this one, but he's trying to get as much temperature in the tyres, get the car set up as much as possible here to feel comfortable. And meanwhile, Adrian Kukulas comes out to the final corner. What's it going to be here for the Porsche 911 driver as he makes his way across the line? I don't think it's going to be an improvement as he comes on down towards turn number 1 at 59.444, so he's going to have one more run of this as he goes on to his fourth and final flying lap. But meanwhile, in terms of closeness at the top, it's still Daniel Thomas in the elite class there on a 56.310, but look at the gap between the top 5 there. It is 600 between Thomas, Lobbit, Grebstad, Sherwood and Lee. It could not be closer. You could cut those gaps with a knife and still have very little left as they make the way on around here, because every thousandth now is going to be critical. And as we see there, Willis Jacko Taylor moves up to P6 now, 2 attempts over the pole, sits on a 56.530. I think qualifying here is going to bode well for whoever gets on pole, but I think it's not going to be the full story. I don't think it's going to be qualifying will determine who your winner is in the elite class, at least, given the fact that how close they are right now. If they stay that close over the race distance, it will come down to strategy as Thomas goes even faster with 55.982 as we look to Sam Sherwood making his way into turn number 1. But Daniel Thomas there with still one lap to go goes incredibly fast on his penultimate lap, to the point now he's put 3.5 tenths between himself and the rest of the field. And can anybody else respond? As we see Joshua Pratt comes completely out of left field there in the Tiki Supersport machine and goes P2 on a 56.228. Now, will there be any form of response here? As we see Håkon Grebstad, he's currently gone purple in subsector 3, but he's not been strong in subsector 4. He's improved in subsector 2. Subsector 1 matched his previous best effectively. Heads into the final corner, and this will be his final flying lap as we've still got 3 minutes to go. The McLaren driver right now making his way to the timeline, and well, he's gone with Old Faithful, but has Faithful gone with him as he crosses the timing line? And it doesn't look to be an improvement in the end for Håkon Grebstad, and as a result he'll be starting P4 at best as there'll be no more laps allotted to him. Meanwhile, Damien Lobbit has still got to try and put some more time in. As we can see elsewhere on the field in the pro class, well, Peter Cox is on pole by 3.5 tenths at the moment, 56.790, and will nobody coming close, and very few drivers left in the pro class to finish their qualifying session, and the same in the AM class as well. It looks like it's Aaron McGregor all the way at the top of the standings there, but as we see here, what is Damien Lobbit making his way through Vidal right now, rolling his way between the two apexes. Not as aggressive there on the apex in turn number 15. Interestingly, the second, the right-hander in the chicane. And as he comes through the final corner, well, what's it going to be as he comes on around? It might be a stronger time as he heads to the line. And well, he's 3 tenths off currently. And in the end, it's pole position for Damien Lobbit. It is a 55.913 at 700ths in the end, faster than Daniel Thomas. And well, Daniel Thomas right now has left a best to last, surely, because he's the only inside the top 9. He's the only elite driver out of circuit right now inside that top 9, and the only man who can potentially subvert the expectations that are now being set. Meanwhile, Ryan Davies is still out there, still trying to put in some laps, as is Ryan Moles. But in terms of the other classes, because again, we have 3 classes, let's not just focus on the elites. We can see here that right now Stuart Brown currently on his 3rd flying lap as he makes his way on around. Meanwhile, Dion Wren yet to get a lap on the board. He hasn't turned a single lap so far, minus what is his warm-up lap. So Wren going incredibly late and saving it, well, very late on in the day. He'll only actually get 1 lap in the end because there's no overtime available to our drivers here. Once we hit 15 minutes, they're immediately taken back to the pits and they go to the grid. But right now, Brown looking to set some form of time here, currently all the way down in P10 effectively. And well, Peter Cox has set the bar high in the pro class of 56.596 as the pole lap. But you can see that right now what Brown will be aiming for is to get himself somewhere in the mix of P2 through to P4, as we have a 3/10 margin there separating Knight, Lewison and Eddowes as Brown makes his way up towards the final corner. And will he be able to find the time he so desires here as he comes on through? 1 minute still left on the clock, and as he comes on out, what's it going to be for Stuart Brown as he heads to the line? And well, the time comes in now, and it's a 57.858. It's a good lap. It puts him at the top of the mid-pack there, ahead of Darren Fellows. Not quite enough to get up inside the top 4, but not too far off by 4.5 tenths. Meanwhile, as he comes on through, we look to Dion Wren, the only driver now out on circuit who is putting in a lap, and he needs to actually put a lap in. Given the fact he's yet to get a time on the board, he's left it all to this final lap. And where will he jump up in the pro class here as he makes his way through the final corner? And I do believe this will be the last lap we get turned here in this qualifying session. He comes on out with Daniel Thomas, having finished his qualifying session, not improving in the end, but Dion Wren is going to improve here, assuming it's a valid lap. He crosses the line, and what's it going to be for Wren? In fact, it's an invalidated lap. It does not count. So Dion Wren will be starting from the back of the entire field as a result. They have an invalid lap. But that's qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. It's Damien Lobbett on elite pole, Peter Cox on pro pole, and then we can see Aaron McGregor on AM pole. But as they make their way to their grid, let's tell you how they line up for round number 5 of 8 in the UKSimRacing GT3 League Season 9. Well, Damien Lobbett takes pole position overall in the elite class in the end by 700 for Symphony Esports Black over ProTech Motorsport's Daniel Thomas. On row 2, it's Tiki Sim Sport Toes Joshua Pratt, joined by Håkon Grebstad from Ignium Motorsport. Now on row 3, it's ProTech Motorsport's Sam Sherwood, who's joined by Daniel Lee, and the privateer there out qualifying Jacko Taylor for Tiki Sim Sport Car Marte, who starts off row 4, joined by Tiki Sim Sport Corpus Martin Tillim. Matthew Crisp and Peter Cox line up together there on the 5th row, and congratulations to Peter Cox from UKSimRacing for the pro pole position. And on row number 6, it's Ryan Davis from Tiki Sim Sport Car Marte, joined by Joe Newman for Simam Racing Red. As we make our way to the 7th row, it's Cy Anthony, joined by Ryan Moles with the ProTech Motorsport driver, having one of his weaker qualifying sessions of the season. And there's Sean Valendia there, who starts off row at number 8 for Tiki Sim Sport Kimmy, joined by Dean Powell, the privateer. On row 9, it's Alex Hill from Tiki Sim Sport, joined by Edward Knight of Ignium Motorsport Spark, with the top 20 being completed by your AM pole sitter of Aaron McGregor, joined on the 10th row by Simam Racing Blues Nathan Foster. On row 11, it's the 2 pros of David Larson from Symphony Esports White, joined by Tiki Sim Sport Kimmy's John Eddowes, and it's the 2 AMs on row 12 of Darren Sharples and Tiki Sim Sport Car Marte's Michael Warrington. And as we continue on down there on row number 13, it's Casper Brotner from Old Dudes and Cars. Watch out for him, he's very fast in the race, and it's a good qualifying lap for him as well, joined on the 13th row by Symphony Esport White's Stuart Brown. Then we can see Darren Fellows of BDM Racing there, lined up on the 14th row, joined by Tiki Sim Sports Colin Patterson, with Adrian Kukulis and Daniel Pace, the Old Dudes and Cars driver, completing out the top 30. It's Mark Johnson on row at 16 for UKSimRacing, joined by the privateer of Eric Stegen on his debut, with Chris Eddersford and Matt Maddox line up on row at number 17, and then behind the UKSimRacing and BDM Racing pair is James Connolly and Mark Collicott. Then on row at number 19, we can see it is there Ben Watkinson. In fact, that's Simon Hartley for Tiki Sim Sport Copper, and what is Eden Frazina there, the privateer. And on row at 20, it's Ben Watkinson and Tiki Sim Sport Kimmy's Jack Bullen. And then on the final row, last but not least, P41 and 41, it's Dion Wren will be starting from the back of the grid, having not been able to set a valid time in the qualifying session. But that is qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. The grid's already pulling away for the formation start. It's going to be a short formation lap, but who is going to be leading out to turn at number 1? That'll be the big question, of course, as we reload the overlay there to give you all the circuit map in the top right corner of your screen. And well, as our drivers make the way on through right now, it is to Damien Lobbett to get us underway to the green and with racing when they make the way onto the start-finish straight. as they come on through, and the field right now having to be very conservative as they make the way up into the Vidal chicane here, with everybody clustering together, and they'll be given the opportunity, or the majority of the field will be given the opportunity to clear the chicane. We look to the front of the field here, as we can see it's Damien Lobbit making his way through the final corner, and as he comes on out, he goes immediately as he comes out the final corner. We are racing, ladies and gentlemen, and it is Lobbit who holds the lead as they charge their way down towards turn number 1, but close behind is Daniel Thomas, immediately trying to hold off Joshua Pratt as they head on down onto the anchors. Pratt trying to go around the outside. There is Thomas defends. Meanwhile, Sam Sherwood coming in hot there. Håkon Grebstad on the outside. Grebstad safe from it, as meanwhile Daniel Lee losing out slightly as he drops back there behind Sherwood. Sherwood having an absolutely blistering start as they make the way through 2 and down towards 3. But in the charge here, meanwhile, we look back to Aaron McGregor, who started to make some ground in the overall category versus Pierce as he makes his way through turn number 3 on the inside there of Alex Hill, battling with the elite driver and trying to come on through. And a little bit further off of them, we see Mark Johnson here, having gained 1 place in class at the start, getting ahead of Daniel Page as he comes on through turns 4 and up towards 5 he goes. But in the charge here, and as they all settle down, we can see Page right now continue to try and harass the UKSimRacing driver, but Johnson showing no signs of being abated by it. But meanwhile, Daniel Lee continuing to struggle here, it would seem, versus where's Jacko Taylor behind, as he has to go defensive here into the hairpin of turn number 8. And as they come on through the right hander, well, now Daniel Lee will feel comfortable with Jacko Taylor and Matthew Crisp going side by side in the run up towards the Schumacher rest. Now who's going to back out here? Well, in the end it will be Crisp who backs out. Meanwhile, we've got a major instant further back, and that's Edward Knight who's gone off there and towards the wall. He's just dodged a brush from the wall, and even Motorsport Spark driver has gone on around, but there's a bit more to the story, I think, than meets the eye. And with that, it's pandemonium here further back as we've got a driver off in the rear of the picture. We'll try and understand who that is shortly, but Alex Hill and Nathan Foster come on through. We've got Aaron McGregor off circuit there, rejoining on the apex of turn number 12, and as he comes on in, well, right now he's got John Eddowes and David Larson behind, and then Darren Sharples is next closest and Peer as they make the way up towards Vidal. Meanwhile, Warrington here battling side by side with Sharples. Michael Warrington on the right, your picture defending in the Tiki Simsport car Marte machine, but McGregor's going slow. Warrington's going for the move on the inside. He overcooks it, however, he goes too early, pulls the trigger on the move, and in the end he misfires, and in return, Darren Sharples gets alongside, but it's free wide here, as that is, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, Casper Brotner up the inside. Brotner there goes for it, and he gets it done, and the old Duty Cars driver makes 2 places to 1 corner. That's Mark Johnson round in the back of your picture as they make the way into lap number 2, and as they come roaring on down towards the next corner, well, right now Casper Brotner is the man with a plan to fly through the field, as now Michael Warrington here finds he's got Darren Fellows up his inside, and Fellows is wanting to make his own ground as we bring the battle box up in the bottom right hand corner of your screen so you can keep track of who's who around one another. And as they make the way through 2 and into 3 once again, well, my goodness, we talked about potential moves of the season, the opening 4 rounds, and well, there Casper Brotner definitely saying to everybody, hold on a second, we're not through the season yet, and I'm going to show you something special. But meanwhile, saying that's not special, Michael Warrington goes round at turn 4 and takes a brief tap with the wall there, and the Tiki Simsport car Marte driver losing out significantly, as meanwhile we look back up to the front of the field, and Daniel Thomas here leading the way, and well, as he makes his way out of turn number 8, now where on earth has our race leader gone to Damien Lobbit is the big question. I think for Damien Lobbit, something very significant has happened in terms of dropping him all the way down the field. We're not quite sure who, but we have had some big incidents already in this race, and we'll try and cover exactly what happened on the opening lap shortly. But as the racing carries on here, Daniel Thomas holding firm at the moment, with Håkon Grebstad staying right behind him, and meanwhile further back here you can see how with Chris getting ahead of Lee, right now Chris definitely setting the pace for the second pack of cars here, with the top 5 already trying to break away, and this is the elite and overall top 5 if you will. And now for Lee, he's got to make a decision. Does he try to force the issue versus the BMW M4 Chris, or does he just settle in for the ride here and go for fuel saving? Well, he goes for it here into Vidal, he gets out the inside. There's a little bit of a cutback attempt there from Chris, but in the end all he finds is the rear of the Ferrari, and Daniel Lee makes the move and now looks to charge on once more. But as they come on through it, meanwhile we do look to Eric Steigen here as he makes his way into turn number 14 through Vidal. He goes himself, chasing after Daniel Page right now, and the number 81 car definitely on the offensive as the privateer heads into the final corner of this lap and looking to try and get into the top 5 of the AM class here. watching his debut. I think he can give himself a pat on the back if he pulls that one off, given the ferocity of the competition in class. But as they head up towards turn number 1, we can tell you right now, Sight Anthony and Ben Watkinson both in the pit lane. Damien Lobbett has dropped all the way to the back of the field again. We don't know the story behind that. We know it's happened, however. But meanwhile, Colin Patterson here side by side with Chris Edisford. This is for P5 in the Pro class. He's going to try and go all the way around the outside to inside into the AMG arena. And as he comes on through, well, Patterson's got the line and he gives a little bit of room there for Edisford, but not enough to give Edisford a full opportunity to come back. And we've got a cast line across the circuit there, and that's Payes who goes sideways. And as he tries to turn it on around the corner, he goes around more so, and Payes loses out massively as he just has to wait for the whole field to make the way on through. And that's the most painful but disciplining thing you can do as a driver here. And well, that's tantamount to the sportsmanship of Daniel Payes from Old Dudes in Cars. But meanwhile, looking a bit further up the road, that is Ryan Davies being passed there by his fellow TE Simsport driver, albeit a different TE Simsport outfit. And that was Sean Valandia in the McLaren going on through to take P10 in the elite class, P11 overall, as they make the way up the hill or through the Schumacher S once again. We are definitely continuing to see a lot of battling here in these open laps. A lot of drivers, I think, feel as though they're not in their right positions right now, and instead are trying to press on and make further offences here before we get towards the end of the first 10 minutes, where we would expect that things may start to settle down into more of the strategic nuances of the sprint. But meanwhile, we look back here to Darren Sharples, who continues to chase after Casper Brotner. And well, despite the mistakes early on from Aaron McGregor, he has started to break away from these two, are battling for P2, with Casper Brotner holding on to the position as they make the way through the kink. But as they head up towards Vito here, Sharples is not waiting around. He looks up the inside versus Brotner. It's going to be a battle on the brakes here. They go too wide. It's going to cost them so much time. There's contact between Brotner and Sharples, as Sharples goes round the front there. And will Brotner backed off immediately, and the two drivers caught up. And with that, that means Adrian Kukulas now comes on through to take P2 in the AM class. But meanwhile, looking back here to Matt Maddox battling side by side with Casper Brotner as they make the way through turn number 16. Was the two drivers coming out of the corner there. You can also see, I do believe that is Simon Hartley a bit further back. But meanwhile, Eden Frazina, well, you can see that up the inside, and in the Red Bull liveried privateer Audi trying to go on the offensive versus Maddox. A lot of drivers who didn't qualify too well in the AM class are now being given a bountiful set of opportunities here to really make it count. Maddox on outside to inside here, Frazina inside to outside, and who's going to emerge victorious? Well, I think right now Maddox is going to have the authorities to race in line, but of course we have seen many a driver already attempt the run around the outside to inside of 3 and 4, but Frazina tries for the cutback instead. I think this is sensible here, not putting too much pressure on the tyres, doesn't want to abuse those right side tyres early on. As he makes way out the corner, in the end he can't make the cutback count, but he does instead hold position as they make the way down towards turn number 6. But as they come roaring on through, we look back up to leaders here, and we'll just in time as going into the Schumacher S. Daniel Thomas under pressure here from Håkon Grebstad as they come on through the Schumacher S. And you can see that Grebstad looking left, right and centre. They battle their way up into turn 11. Grebstad goes round the outside, Thomas holds home, and as he makes his way out of 11 into 12, Thomas there still alive and kicking in the lead of this race, but for how long before Grebstad can finally make the move count? There's contact between the two of them as they come out of 12 and up towards 13. It's going to be Audi power on the one hand versus McLaren power on the other, and the McLaren seems to be getting ahead, but Thomas is on the inside. He can make this too wide as much as he wants as they battle on the brakes. Grebstad backs off there and tucks in behind as Thomas keeps the lead for now, and you see Sam Sherwood close up behind this battle for lead. Sherwood has come through the field like an absolute rocket on these opening laps, and Grebstad goes deep. Sherwood looks up the inside, and the Protect Motorsport pair are trying to make it 1-2 here, but Grebstad's not out of it yet as the Ignium Motorsport driver from Norway continues to charge on. And of course we have seen so far it has been Grebstad who has been the master of Monza, but also the skilled man of strategy, and Thomas has been the driver of pace. But as they make their way through turn 1, and Grebstad now definitely trying to put his foot down inside to outside here as they come through 1 into 2. Thomas is still there, and as they come through the left-hander, it's now into the next left-hander. Grebstad's going to have a long way around the house here. He's going to get this done, and as they come through 3 and into 4, a little bit deep here but still on the inside, Thomas tries to close the door but he can't, and Sherwood is so close right now as we jump on board here with the Lamborghini driver who tucks him behind, gives a little tap there to the rear of Thomas as they break the way, and Grebstad on his right still, and they're all just showing enough space for the time being, but for how long before one of them's got to give way or back out? You see there in the rear view TV camera. That is Jacko Taylor behind as well. It's a four-way battle for the lead. Grebstad's not done yet as they make the way down. Taylor tries to look around the outside, he can't find it. Grebstad up the inside here as Sherwood takes a little peek versus his teammate. With the Protect Motorsport driver here, I think will be given the order to act as rear guard for the time being, as meanwhile Daniel Lee is closed up to this battle for the lead at a very rapid rate of knots as they make the way through the Schumacher once again. This is the fifth time of asking. We've not even cleared 10 minutes of 45 yet as they make the way down into turn number 11. They all settle down for now, and Grebstad gets the move done in the run out of 8 into the Schumacher, but he goes deep, and as he does here, does this cost him time? It's going to leave him vulnerable, but I think right now the McLaren driver has done enough. But what a thriller of a battle there, and I agree with you entirely, Ben Hicks. Epic racing from start to finish there, and I don't think we're quite done yet with regards to what's to come later in this race. But now can the number 37 McLaren break away here and start to open up an advantage that he can convert to his advantage further in the strategy stakes of the pit? And we can see there behind how everybody has been brought right back up into this battle for the lead. We've got Jacko Taylor there, who's now trying to hunt after Sam Sherwood with Daniel Lee just behind, but as they head across the timeline, everybody right now doing little bobs and weaves here on the straight, trying to take away a little bit of that distant toe as they head down towards turn number 1. And I think for everyone right now, they have missed this racing. Well, a good number of them may have raced the Bathurst 12 hours earlier this weekend, but right now, if they're exhausted, they're showing no signs of it, because everybody is absolutely fired up here in Germany today. But meanwhile, as we look from them, it's a bit further down the order, Colin Patterson, and meanwhile, the battle for what is their P5 in the Pro class, trying to chase after Adrian Kukulis, who is an AM driver by comparison. In fact, he's trying to hunt down Darren Fellows, who's just up the road there, who's gone through turn 2. And as the TE SimSport driver here clears Kukulis, who I think lets it go then. Kukulis, of course, one to focus on his own class racing. There is no extra points for battling a driver in another class and beating him. We should point out here, all points are awarded based on class finishing position. And Patterson trying to hunt down Fellows, and he's got a long way to go, however, with the gap currently settling in at 2 seconds. But meanwhile, behind there, you can see the AM pack a little bit further off. Behind Chris Edison, the McLaren from UKSimRacing at the head of this group, but it is Sharples who's P3 in the AM class, the privateer, who has Casper Bronner, Eric Stegen, and also Matt Maddox tucked in behind him. And also, I do believe that is Rosina and Hartley all closing up, and indeed that is from P3 to P8 in the AM class, all running together nose to tail. And as they make the way down the hill right now towards turn number 8, well, any moment here, if we see a small battle, it could erupt, much like in the elite class. But meanwhile, we've had something erupt here. That's Daniel Lee, who's off at turn number 11. It was going so well, and he's lost it there at the corner. I wonder if that was a mistake of his own doing, or whether there's been something that's aided him in that regard. But either way, we can't postulate at the moment any further. Instead, we focus on the here and now, and that is Lee dropping all the way down to P14 in the elite class. And well, he's got a 21-second gap over Ryan Moles. He won't be too worried about that, but he'll be worried about the fact that his run of this race has been undermined as Edo's there lets Lee go into Vidal. And as they make the way through the slow chicane, Edo's just watches on. And I think for John Eddowes, this is a bit of a double-edged sword here, in the fact that he's let another class driver go, and therefore he doesn't have to worry about them. But in having such a slow run through the chicane, in letting Lee go, he's actually lost 0.3 of a second to David Lawson behind in the Ghostbusters machine there, as you can see just behind him, the Ferrari. And also on top of that, he's lost 0.5 second to the pro class leader of Peter Cox. And that's the thing as well, you really do have to make those smart and sensible decisions at the right time, in terms of it better to battle the other driver in class and keep them behind you, or alternatively let them go on through, and how much time does it actually cost you? But meanwhile, as the racing carries on here, David Larson will now have the rear of the TE SimSport BMW well and firmly in his sights. Can the 306 driver here find a way to gain another place for Symphony Esports? Why? Or will he have to bide his time as he makes his way out to turn number 4 once again? Well, that we'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, looking a little bit further back to Sharples here. Sharples looking up the inside of Chris Edison. Edison having a poor run out of 2. And as they come through 3 into 4, Sharples now trying to get past the pro driver. Here is the AM driver, Sharples, for the simple reason he does not want that AM pack behind him anywhere near him. But Edison's coming back here as they make the way into turn 5. And as they make the way down into the braking zone for 6, well, Sharples giving it everything. But I wonder how much rear wing Edison's running on that McLaren, because the speed it carried out of turn 4 would suggest it's running significantly less rear wing. And as they make the way down the hill, you can see it. Look at the speed that Edison's carrying. He's pulled ahead. They were side by side coming out of them, but up the inside goes Casper Brunner. He tries it again, but this time it ends in tears. And as they come on through, through. Wolf, for 3 of them getting it caught up in the mix. Meanwhile, it's Eric Stegen who takes P3 in the AM class. They're just dodging the carnage ahead of him, cutting on the inside and low, and will Brockner trying to make another 3 wide work to his advantage, but in the end that was a bridge too far into a corner that was always going to close by looks of things. And right now the privateer of Stegen definitely enjoying the racing here as they make their way through. Maddox goes deep at 11, returns to the circuit, and Simon Hartley tries to come back at him in the AM class, but right now the BDM Racing driver keeping ahead. And to be fair, the one thing the Ferrari's very good at is top end speed as they make the way on through, albeit it takes a while to get up to top speed, but once it's there it's absolutely flying. The BMW M4 by comparison not the strongest on the brakes, so therefore as they make the way through turns 14 and 15, well, Hartley right now won't be able to lunge it as much as perhaps he would like to in another car, and Sharple's tucked in behind, and definitely that was very costly there for Sharple's, Eddersford and also Brockner as they come out of the final corner and onto another lap. Meanwhile, we look a bit further up the field to your leaders overall and in the elite class here, and we can see here as we say hello there to Mary Everton, who is cheering on John Eddowes there. Good luck wishes from Switzerland. Well, indeed, John Eddowes reaches all across the world, it would seem, but we can see here Håkon Grebstad holding on to the lead at the moment, with Daniel Thomas continuing to stay close. But of course, now that as we move our way to 15 minutes of this race complete, we're not quite in the strategy window yet in terms of needing to come into the pits or seeing drivers come in. And again, we've seen a flavour of strategies in the sprint races. Some of the drivers will come in around the 20-minute mark, some will go right at the halfway point, which of course would be 22.5 minutes, and some have gone as long as 35 to 37 minutes before they pit. But the key thing is, when you're running up front like this, when you're Håkon Grebstad, can you afford to run aggressively? Can you try to break away? And if you do try to, how much is it going to cost you? And I think right now Grebstad will be running to a defined pace that he feels as though is manageable. But the thing for him is if Daniel Thomas can stay with him, then Thomas can use the toe on the stretches here, but hitting the run out to 12 up towards Vidal at 14, and he can short shift slightly. But again, it does look as though here Grebstad really pushing the pace right now. And I think Thomas has not been given the opportunity to lift and coast and short shift as much as perhaps he would like if circumstances were different. So this could really be a run of nailing it in the pit box in terms of it could come down to the literal drip of fuel that goes in. But meanwhile, looking further back, Daniel Lee up the inside there of what is, I do believe, Joshua Pratt gets the move done there for P12 into Vidal. That's in the elite class with Pratt just behind. Meanwhile, Dean Powell here up the inside of Alex Hill and making the move count. Then the number 6 BMW, the privateer, moving on through in the official M-Power BMW M4 colours as he comes down towards turn number 1. And will Hill trying to come back here in the turn and see how much that Ferrari comes alive from 4th gear upwards. Hill goes all in on the inside. Powell turns in. He's got to give the space. And as they make their way through the corner, where it's going to be a drag race up towards turn 2. It's a short one, but Dean Powell can cover it off. Hill tucks back in behind as they make the way down the hill. And as they come into the braking zone, I think it's only going one way, and that is Dean Powell regains the position. But as they make the way on through the rest of the Mercedes arena, meanwhile we do look to David Lawson, who has fallen a bit further back off of John Eddowes, and in fact now finds himself what is there 1.3 seconds off of Eddowes. Now it doesn't sound like much, but the problem is between him and Eddowes, he's got 2 elite drivers who are definitely trying to make the way further up the field, and that's Nathan Foster and Joshua Pratt as they make the way down through 6 and into 7. And with your John Eddowes right now, I think you really, if you're not worried about Peter Cox who's leading the race, then for Eddowes all he'll want to do at this point is make sure he does not lose time. If he does have Foster and Pratt coming through in the end, he will want to lose minimal time, or ideally try and keep them behind him, and then he gives himself a nice buffer where he puts the pressure on Lowerson to have to pick his way past 2 elite drivers, where it's difficult enough making your way past 2 drivers in your own class when you're hunting someone who's leading for a position further up the road. But when it's 2 drivers in the class above you, well, of course the elite drivers will have their own aspirations to want to pass Eddowes, and therefore it really does become an entirely different difficulty. But as they come on through it, meanwhile we look back up to P5 in the elite class here in the overall, and it's Matthew Crisp versus there Martin Tilling. Tilling looking up the inside, and Crisp not finding it too hard here. Tilling comes on through, retakes the race line. Smart driving from the pair. They're both deciding, you know what, it's better for us to work together in that instance rather than fight, because if they were to fight through the apex of the first part of the chicane, they would have lost a lot of time versus Jacko Taylor, and therefore now Chris falls back a position, but he can afford just to give himself a little bit more fuel, as we do say hello there to Pacific Zeus in the YouTube chat. But as they make their way across the timeline here, and on top of them is the lap 10 in this 45-minute race. Further down the field, we do look back to Michael Warrington here, battling with Simon Hartley in the charge up towards Vito, and up the inside goes Sharples there. The Lamborghini comes roaring into the braking braking zone, and Sharples looks to make it count as soon as possible. Well, as they make the way out of turn number 15 there, Sharples gains another place, and Michael Warrington definitely being caught out by that, as meanwhile Dion Wren tucked in behind there, behind Edward Knight, as they make the way out of turn 16. We jump on board here with the Audi driver as he hunts down the Audi-powered Lamborghini. Indeed, that's the same Audi engine as in the R8 in the back of the Huracan GT3 Evo, the V10 engine. Wren thinks about it there, he thinks about going all in, but it looks so Knight's got a bit deep as he tries to go around the outside of Edison. Now as they bring their way back out 1 and up towards 2, of course for Wren, he's got to expect the Knight's going to defend that inside line. And well, it's difficult here because Edison, it would seem, is a bit of a cork in the bowl for the pair of them, and Wren wants to gain 2 places. I think here, with the amount that Knight is being caught up behind Edison, Wren's actually got to play the patience game here and see if he can capitalise as the two of them in front come together of some description. But of course, we know anything about Knight and Edison as they race as clean as they possibly can. Oh, goodness me, Wren catches the grass there, just briefly under braking, and the car goes on around. And I think there's been contact there with Casper Brotner, who's coming to the side. And well, we call that from on board, but Dion Wren, just a tiny slip to the grass there under braking into turn number 6. And it's all gone horribly wrong for the privateer as he brings it gradually back round and onto circuit. But that car is definitely going to be wounded, but as he gradually inches his way back on. Meanwhile, we look back towards the front of the field, and it's Daniel Thomas up the inside there of Grebstad, and retakes the lead in this race. But Grebstad, they're going very deep into turn 6 now. I wonder if that was intentional from Grebstad to go that deep. He tucks in behind, makes Thomas defend here, and as they make their way down towards turn 1, in fact, it may have just been a mistake from Grebstad, but if so, he's really coming back at this immediately. And well, Thomas defending here, as Sherwood looks on from behind again, 9/10 back as they come into turn 1, but I don't think for long. But Thomas defending here as much as he can. I think he feels as though he really does need this track position authority. He does not want Grebstad to break away whatsoever. I wonder if he's worried that if Grebstad is able to lead this race, he will get clear by the time they come into the pit lane, and therefore he can't jump back in terms of the strategic call. But either way, as they make the way out of turn 4, a bit wide there, Jacko Taylor in, people, he's got to be careful of that because of course track limits will apply as they make the way out of turn 4. It's why the areas that's watched most by the automated stewarding system. But as they come down into turn number 7, right now Jacko Taylor trying to charge on after the top 3, breaking away from the rear guard from P5 through to P7, and it's a bit of an awkward no man's land here for the TT Simsport Car Marte driver. He's not quite close enough to battle up front, but he is clear enough to stay clear of the danger behind. But meanwhile, speaking of the danger up front, we can see here that Håkon Grebstad has been passed by Sam Sherwood as they make the way up into the Schumacher S, and as they come up roaring on through will mean, well, it's all arms out here with regards to Chris Edisford defending versus Knight as they come through turns 3 and 4, and this is in the battle for P6 in the Pro class. Only moments ago we were watching this and seeing how Knight was caught up behind, and in fact there we can see as they make their way into turn 6, Dion Wren has fallen off of this, of course, with the mistake at turn 6 a lap ago, and will now catch up gradually. It's Casper Brotner, but otherwise these two in a bit of an isolated battle between one another as Edisford makes his way down towards turn number 8, and it does look as though Knight running similar rear wing as they head down into the braking zone here for the hairpin. Knight's going to go all the way around the outside as they make the way up the hill now. Will Edisford had enough on that inside line? Knight's not going to back out here. It's going to be a game of chicken. Who's going to back out? In fact, neither does. They go too wide into the Schumacher S, but in the end, Knight takes the position there on the inside. He uses the initiative and finally gets P6 in the Pro class as they break the way into turn number 11, where Edison right now definitely showing that defensive nuance that he has and is known for. But meanwhile, we look back up to the very front of the field, and here comes Grebstad battling side by side out 1 into 2 versus Sherwood. They go into contact there and they come through, and sideways they go, and here comes Grebstad and Sam Sherwood drop down the field. It's disaster for them, but meanwhile for Daniel Thomas, this essentially gives him all the race he needs. As meanwhile Matthew Crisp up the inside there, Grebstad takes P4, and well, everywhere you look there's a battle unfolding as Crisp now will look to dig in and not let Grebstad take the place back off of him, as Tilling meanwhile up into P3 here unexpectedly. The TT Simsport driver at the head of this group, I think he'll be thinking, right, now it's hammer time, I'm going to hold on to this for the very end because he'll take an unexpected podium at this rate. But as they make the way down towards turn number 8, we can start to give you a couple of replays of things that happened early on in the race. Start off with what exactly happened to Damien Lobbit from the lead of the race. In fact, that was Damien Lobbit parked up there at the side of the circuit, so this happened much before the moment. In fact, we take a further look back here early on in the race. So coming through the Schumacher S, on the gravel there, causing the car to step loose, and Lobbit went on around there into the wall, and that explains why he was looking at the wrong way, and then Chris just having to take evasive action. But for Damien Lobbit to pull out the lead so early on, a disaster for Lobbit. But as we return to the race in here, and we say hello there to Brooker 13 Gaming. Good evening to you, Brooker. I hope you're doing well. And as the drivers make their way through, you're looking at the live pictures once again, and we'd love to give you further replays of everything that did happen on the open laps. But to do so, of course, ladies and gentlemen, means we could miss what happens at any immediate moment. But we'll try and catch some other moments from earlier on very shortly, including what happened to Ben Watkinson. But meanwhile, into the pits comes Grebstad from P5. Well, of course, this won't be where he wanted to come into the pits from, but can Grebstad find a way for Ignium Motorsport to make the jump on strategy here by going in earlier than most? Nobody else has come on in yet with regards to the top 20. Grebstad is the first man in, and we're making the strategic call nice and early here. This may just give him another opportunity to come on back later on in this race. But meanwhile, with things now starting to settle and the focus becoming more and more on strategy, Brian Davies here in the Elite Class P7, fending off Sean Valandia for now. And again, we can see the Tiki Simsport car Marte driver holding off his Tiki Simsport compatriot, but at the same time in two sister outfits here as they make the way on through, but neither one gaining the advantage on the other. They stay as they were, but as they come on through at turn number 4, we take a look back to what happened to Ben Watkinson on the opening lap. In fact, we're a little bit obscured by a tree of some description, and well, I'm not sure where, oh goodness me, where on earth did Ben Watkinson go? That was off. Well, in fact, I think he's had to cut through. There was some damage very early on in the race for Ben Watkinson. And we take a look back a bit further at the start, and he was making his way up the hill through the Schumacher S. Rear of the car goes, oh goodness me, into tyre. In fact, the car just slid off the circuit, and that explains why he's listed as off track, as he had to turn it around in the DTM or the touring car hairpin there. So Ben Watkinson from the back of the field having a dismal start to his day. As we return to the live pictures once again, was the racing that carries on. There were some other moments of contention, including what was Ryan Moles having a disappointing start to his day. And well, this is what happened to Ryan Moles on the opening lap, coming on through what was there the Vidal chicane, tucked in behind what looked to be, I believe, in fact, Ryan Moles just breaking his way on in, and the car going round there. Well, was there some damage that we didn't know about? But for Moles, the car just letting go. And meanwhile, further back in the picture, I think that's Mark Collicott in a nightmare moment that we can see just creeping on through. But for so many drivers, it all went horribly wrong early on in the race. And as we do look to Ryan Davies again, as we return to the live pictures, we've got some more pit stops coming on. We have Sam Sherwood into the pit lane, and well, he's decided to call it relatively early, and I wonder whether he's trying to offset the pit stop of Håkon Grebstad as he makes one through. Chris Edison has had to be towed to the pits quite recently, we should point out, but as Sherwood makes his way into his pit box very shortly, well, there now we do have making the way on through. This is Joshua Pratt with, I think it is a slowdown for Pratt after the Vidal chicane, where he's cut track limits and therefore having to let a lot of drivers go. But he drops all the way down to P14, and in fact P11 in the elite class, but P14 overall as he heads up towards turn number 2 once again. But as he comes on through, more pit stops still unfolding, including Grebstad here making his way down towards turn 1. And well, there's the difference. Ryan Moles tucked in behind, and Moles, of course, having not had a pit stop yet with what happened on the opening lap. Meanwhile, Sam Sherwood, who's just had his pit stop, has come out behind Grebstad by 1.5 seconds. So Grebstad has jumped the driver who he came into contact with at turn number 2. And as they make the way into 3, there's a bit of contact there between Moles and what's Kukulis. And Kukulis right now, he's yet to have pitted as the second place AM driver, and he won't be too pleased with that contact on the side of the car, but hopefully it'll just be some light damage to the aerodynamics, not anything major in terms of the front left suspension from the driver's perspective as they make the way into turn number 6. As they come down, Sherwood and Moles immediately swapping places there. The two Protect Motorsport drivers knowing who's already had the pit stop and who hasn't, and who's the priority for leading the group. But as they make their way down towards turn 8, Sherwood's got a long way to go. And indeed, now we really are waiting to see how the pit stops overlay on one another. But as our drivers make their way on around, well, as we look back to what is Adrian Kukulis there behind them, and then you've got Eric Stegen, who is only 3 seconds off. The battle for the AM podium here, definitely hot outside of your leader, with Aaron McGregor a whole 16.5 seconds clear of the rest of the AM field. But right now, Eric Stegen definitely enjoying this start to his proceedings today. On his debut, running a comfortable P3 at the moment, albeit there's been a bit of drama around him. But speaking of drama, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the majority of the elite class coming in. I think we may have pit stop season unfolding us right now. We just did the halfway point to the race and gone 5 minutes plus, and most of the top 10 are already into the pit lane. And as they all coming in, the only driver who stays out to lead a lap of the race is Matthew Crispy of the private here who's yet to come on in, and John Eddowes does the same in the Pro Class here as he comes on down. Well, for Eddowes now it is hammer time with regards to trying to find a way to offset Peter Cox. But meanwhile in the pit lane, Daniel Thomas comes on out, but just behind him there and gaining 2 seconds in the pit lane. That's Taylor. Jacko Taylor has caught right up to the back of the Protect Motorsport leader, the effective leader of this race, and the Tiki Sim Sport Car Marte driver really trying to get back in the hunt. Meanwhile, Håkon Grebstad has jumped back up to P4, effectively P3, when we have Chris make his pit stop. So Grebstad right now is not out of this race, and given the fact we have approximately 17 minutes plus the final lap to go, at the rate of knots that Grebstad is pushing right now, I would not be surprised if he is right there trying to fight for the win at the very end, because he is 6 seconds off the leader. And if there's anything we can guarantee right now is that the number 37 McLaren driver has got the bit between his teeth, and he is not going to give in as he makes his way into turn 6 and 7. But coming on down and through into turn 7 now, where you can see just behind them Martin Tilling caught up behind Joe Newman. In fact, Newman getting the jump there on Tilling in the pit lane. Tilling losing quite a bit of ground, and Sam Sherwood tucked in behind. So for Sherwood, that undercut has really not worked out. For Tilling going into the pits, it's just not worked out in general. And meanwhile, Joe Newman's made this game. He's gained 2 places for the price of 1 pit stop as they make their way out to turn 8 and up with the Schumacher S once again. And as we jump on board here with Sam Sherwood, well, now, of course, the dynamic changes at this point, because you know now you're not going to be racing for a pit stop anymore. Pit stops are all said and done. In fact, there's a slowdown there for Tilling, and I believe that's track limits as Peter Cox comes on through. And as they make the one for us, wonder if there was an issue for what is Tilling's car there. As we can see, Ryan Davies going very wide, and as they make the way down through turns 11 and 12, well, Ryan Davies tucks in behind Tilling, but Tilling with an unexpected slowdown, and well, that's going to gift a lot of time to his rivals up front. But meanwhile, speaking of things that are going up front, we do have into the pits Matthew Crispin, the lead of this race, and John Eddowes comes in from the lead of the Pro Class behind the elite leader, and that means it will be business as usual resumed when Daniel Thomas comes on through here to what we suspect retake the overall in the elite lead, albeit Crisp has already left his pit lane box as we see him making his way on down. So Crisp is not too far off of this, so it's going to be Thomas, Taylor, and then Crisp come out, and that top 3 have really broken away in this pit stop window. Behind them is Grebstad, P4, and then we have Newman and Sherwood with Peter Cox retaking the lead of this race, fending off their Tilling. But as they make the way out to turn number 1, Cox has got to be careful. If he battles this too hard, he's got a 9-second advantage over John Eddowes right now. He's P2 in the Pro Class, but fighting with the elite drivers here. He doesn't gain anything. It's just pride on the line here, because you'd love to take the scalp of an elite driver and say you beat them, but at the same time you're not gaining any points, and points mean championship prizes. And that's the thing I think for Cox right now. He's got to be very wary of the fact that if he carries on down this path, he may just end up being pushed back towards Eddowes, who is 8.5 seconds already, given the fighting we've seen through the Mercedes arena. And put that in perspective as they come on down, there's Dean Powell making his way on through, and then there's John Eddowes in the background with Nathan Foster between the pair as they make their way in towards turn number 8 very shortly. But as they come on through, and meanwhile we look from them back to the AM class, and indeed right in the thick of the AM class here we can see Matt Maddox continue to chase after Darren Sharples, the BDM Racing Ferrari, in its wonderful luminescent, what is there, yellow and blue colours, going to hunting after Lamborghini Huracan. And in return, behind he's got the old dudes in cars driver Casper Rotner, who after his heroics early on in this race, then of course going from hero to zero in the run down towards turn 8, trying to make it 3 wide again, and now trying to go back on the rise to being a hero in chasing after P5 in the AM class as they make their way into left into right here. And as they come on down right now, I think Brotner's going to be asking himself the question, when am I going for the move, not if I can make the move, given the amount of pace he just took out of Maddox in the run through 6 and 7, looking a bit more composed as they come on down here. Well, has Maddox got anything in the tank to be able to hold it off as they come down into turn number 8. And of course, the nature of this circuit does change from the first half of lap to the second. The average apex speed really does start to increase on the second half of lap once they come out of the hairpin at turn number 8, and that's something which Maddox may have set the car up for, is more medium speed manoeuvrability and top end speed. But as they come on through the Schumacher, there's a bit of gravel there for Maddox, that's going to cost him the speed. He defends into turn 11. Brotner looks on the outside, he can't quite find it, so instead he just tucks back in for now, but keeping the pressure on. And as we ride on board here with Brotner dropping a second briefly before powering out in third, he's going to get the sling out to the corner, and he's got the run here. And I think in fact Maddox had a very slow run off the corner and having to just lift off there and let go. I think there was a slowdown for that cut coming through the Schumacher S over the apex to turn number 10, and Brotner taking P5 in the end in the AM class and what is P27 overall. But looking from them back up to what is just outside the overall top 10, but P10 in the elite class here. Well, Alex Hill's got the pressure of Daniel Lee behind as Lee tucked in for now. And and of course lead with that mistake at what was turn number 11 early on in the race on the opening 5 lap. The opening 5 laps cost him quite dear when he was running inside the top 5 at that point in time. Well, again, right now it's very close in the run from what is P5 in the elite class all the way back to P12, in the fact that between them all you do have a rough margin of about 10 seconds, so just a couple of battles can cause the field to cluster right back together here. It's not over yet, but of course all our drivers right now pressing on. And well, speaking of pressing on here, you look to your leaders overall and you can see Daniel Thomas, the ProTech Motorsport driver here, doing everything in his power to keep Taylor and Chris behind. But of course they do have Grebstad, who is continuing to rip time out of this top 3. That last lap, Grebstad was the fastest man on circuit by 3 attempts compared to the trio of leaders here, and that's what they've got to be aware of right now. The Ignite Motorsport driver is only 3 seconds off of the back of this group, and you'll see him in the rear of the picture there coming through Vidal, and if he carries on at this rate or not, he will be there right at the end of this race if he carries on with the push that he's going for. But of course, when he pushes this hard, it could mean that he has the risk of overheating the tyres, and if he does, will the tyres feel comfortable at the very end when they need to be in their optimum? As we see there, 57.226 for Grebstad. Meanwhile, fastest lap of the race set by Matthew Crisp in P3 at 56.728. Crisp now starting to show his fangs as well. Everybody getting their teeth out at this point, but as they make their way through turn 1 and up into 2 here, well, it could go either way. And I think Chris right now will be looking at this situation and thinking, is this my time to finally be on the top step of the elite podium? Indeed, we've seen Daniel Thomas, Grebstad, and also what is Ryan Moles. Those have been your 3 elite winners over the course of this season, with Grebstad making it a double in rounds 3 and 4. But as they make their way down towards turn 6, we are due another winner, given the relative pace of the field. And could Chris be that person? And let's not also count out Jacko Taylor here, who finds himself right in the middle of the 2 drivers around him in terms of equidistant gap between Thomas and Crisp either side. And as they come down towards turn 8, well, Taylor has jumped into this position unexpectedly, but he's there on merit just as much in terms of the fortune that's favoured him as he heads back up the hill. But as we look from them back to the pro class, meanwhile, Colin Patterson here continues to try and chase down Darren Fellows in the hunt for P4 in the pro class. The TE Sport driver taking a little bit of a feint there into turn 6, trying to get into the head of Fellows as they make their way through the left into right. As they come down the hill, of course, to Patterson, what he'll want to do is not do too many of those feints too hard, for the simple reason he'll lose the speed in the corners, but he gets a good run there out of 7. Meanwhile, Fellows really struggling for traction out of 7, and as they come down into the hairpin, well, on the brakes they battle. We right on board the gearbox here of the Ferrari from BDM Racing the Fellows, and as the 404 machine makes its way uphill, well, we can see that the power of the Ferrari really being demonstrated versus the Audi engine and Lamborghini as they come through the Schumacher S, and we're just able to open up that gap more. And again, it's those contrasting natures of the halves of the lap, whereby that first half of the lap really focused around low speed corners. Meanwhile, the second half of the lap, bigger focus on what is medium apex speed corners, and this is where Fellows just seems to be a bit more comfortable in the car as they head up towards Vito here, but now in the tow, 2.5 seconds as they exit the corner, as they head through the kink of 13. Fellows covers it off here. Does he really need to? Well, in return, Patterson takes a look up the inside, can't quite find it, and therefore they stay as they are. Gap neutralised as they make their way out of the chicane and up towards 16, but again, Fellows not quick on the draw there with regards to returning to full throttle. I think struggling a little bit with regards to the chicane, but meanwhile we've had a change of place further down. That's Adrian Kukulas, who's off circuit there. That's at turn 13. That's a very odd place for the privateer to get it wrong, and as he returns to speed, will cuts right across what is there the grass of, well, in fact, just really short-handed Vito. He's been in contact of some description. What's happened to Kukulas? We get a replay and take a look back. Well, this was in the run through the kink of 13, coming on through the corner, and a tap there from what was, I do believe, that was not Casper Brotner, but Kukulas being tapped, and we're not quite sure who that was, and we're not going to play judge during execution. Was that Eric Stegen who actually made the contact in the rear of the car? But Kukulas being tapped, and as a result being turned on around, and with that and the damage, he's had to come into the pits as a result. But as we return to the live pictures, well, we do look to Stegen here. Well, in fact, it was not him. I think that may have actually been Cy Anthony there who made the contact. Cy Anthony a lap down, and well, the colours on the car look similar, but again, that's just based on our presumption, but we're not going to confirm that. But either way there, Kukulas' run of P2 in the AM class being spoiled, and well, now as we look to Stegen, it does look as though here this race is just getting better and better as it goes on, albeit he is currently a margin of 23 seconds off of the AM leader of Aaron McGregor, but I think he'll be thinking about the P2 right now and thinking that that's more than enough given the fact he's come into a very tough field. But meanwhile, as we look from our second place AM driver here, back up to 4th place in the Pro Class here. Darren Fellows continues to hold of Colin Patterson. Well, Patterson's still there as they make their way out to 12 and up towards 13. We've still got, what is there, 7 minutes plus the final lap to go. And you see Patterson getting a really good run this time off of 12 up towards 14. He switches one side then the other. He tries to throw the dummy, but Fellows doesn't fall for it. He just stays to his guns. And as they make their way out of the chicane, Fellows holds on for now, but for how long? As we can see, that small mistake from Patterson coming off of turn 15 and they're trying to reset the car. But meanwhile, we look back up to your leaders here, and well, Daniel Thomas is still holding on to lead, but Crisp is now ahead of Jacko Taylor in the hunt for P2. And well, the question is, how did it happen? Well, we can show you very shortly. As they made their way down towards turn number 1, Crisp looked up the inside there in the draft. Taylor didn't really cover it off too much, and in fact, as they made their way out to one, Taylor just not fighting it back at all. And I wonder if Taylor here feels as though a podium's more than enough for him, and he'd rather just let the top 2 run away with this and battle one another hard. They do, of course, have the worry about Grebstad, who is 3 seconds back. You can see him there in the rear of the picture in the second group with what is Joe Newman and Sam Sherwood behind. Sherwood continues to try and hound down Newman, but as we return to live pictures here right now, it does look as though Grebstad's charge, which is continuing, but he's not closing at the rate of knots he would perhaps like to as he makes his way up the hill into 11. And I can see Paul Smith there from Ignition Motorsport cheering on the team and saying, come on Ignition Motorsport, big push to the checkered flag. And well, Grebstad right now be getting all the motivation he needs from the team and encouragement as he makes his way up towards turn number 13. But I think here he is running out of steam given the time remaining, and the gap's still at 3.5 seconds to Taylor, who's up the road. But meanwhile, as they all come through, we look back to Daniel Lee, who has made his way already past Alex Hill and now trying to make his way past Ryan Davis as he makes his way out the inside here. Onto the brakes he goes, and Lee gets it stopped in time. And as they come through the left-right, well, he gets it all sorted and squared away. But will there be a counter-attack here from Davis as they make their way onto turn number 1 very shortly? Well, as they head on to the start-finish straight, can Lee get the power down there? He does so. The gap's 3 attempts. They hit the timing line and now got 2/3 of the straight still to go. And Lee looking safe. His next target will be Sean Belandia, and well, his target is 2 seconds up the road as they make their way down into the braking zone. Somebody coming out of the pits there, that's Ben Watkinson, who's just creeping along and letting the field come through because he is effectively a lap down at this point. And meanwhile, Joshua Pratt, they're going around John Eddowes, and Eddowes not fighting this. And I think Eddowes cognizant of the fact that right now all he needs to do is hold on to P2. Peter Cox is too far away. As they head on through. And meanwhile, it's all happening again in the AM classes. Matt Maddox battling hard with Michael Warrington as they come out of 12 and up towards turn number 14. And Maddox there looking for the return for BDM Racing. Can't find it on the brakes, and Warrington takes the move as normal. But meanwhile, we've got drama all the way at the top here. It's Matthew Cripps from P2 in the elite class, drops all the way down to P6. And Håkon Grebstad is now up to P2. Sam Sherwood's in P3. And I think Jacko Taylor's been involved in some sort of incident as well. I think the two drivers have come together because meanwhile, Sherwood here battling side by side with Joe Newman for the final spot on the podium. Well, Sherwood's on the inside. It's going to be so different tuck, and he gets it done there. And in the end, Newman being made to back out. You can see a flash of lights there from Newman. He's not too happy as Sherwood keeping his nose in. But at the same time, sometimes you've got to be brave, to be bold to win. And for Sam Sherwood, that's what it's all been about today. He's really had to put his foot down and put a marker down in terms of wanting to be on that podium. But we need to take a look back at what exactly happened to Crisp and Taylor. And here's the replay that may just tell us the story. Was they make their way into turn number 6, then battling side by side, and well, as you can see there, the two of them came together, and well, that's a difficult one there. I think Taylor with his nose in, well, Crisp in the end coming across and into contact with the nose of the Audi, and Chris rear end, of course, being sent spiraling off at turn number 7. But the two drivers, they're racing one another hard. But thankfully, we're in the commentary booth, we're not in the stewarding booth, and I'm sure the post-race stewards will have a lot of work to deal with there with regards to that one. A couple other incidents earlier on in the race, but of course, all stewarding for these races is done post-round. But as we return to live pictures here, Sherwood up the inside of what is Bullen as they make their way through turn number 1, and there the AM driver, who is a lap down, just letting up the field go as best as he can do so. Of course, he'll be racing his race, blue flags waving, but as they make their way down towards turn number 3, at 3 minutes still on the clock, and well, it's all to play for in a good number of spots at the moment, including what is P1 in this race. Albeit right now, Daniel Thomas, I think, will feel as though he's got it done, so long as he doesn't step a foot wrong. But meanwhile, in the battle for P2, Grebstad here still being hunted by Sherwood. And of course, these two, we saw them come together early in the race at turn number 2. Before the pit stops, they made contact one another 19 minutes in. And now they're back together 42.5 minutes in. And will we see more fireworks between them? Neither one of them will want to gain the win in that battle for P2 through contact. But I think neither driver wants to give in right now. And therefore, it does become what is the unstoppable force versus the immovable object. The immovable object in this case being Håkon Grebstad, and meanwhile the unstoppable force being Sam Sherwood. And which one will win out as they make the way up towards turn number 11? Well, right now Grebstad holding the gap of half a second, but again both of them here on the rugged edge of adhesion as they head into turn 12. And don't count out Joe Newman behind, who's watching on with interest here and looking to try and pick up the pieces should one of them get it wrong. But meanwhile, as they coming down towards turn number 13, we do look back to what is there, Mark Johnson, who's chasing after P6 in the AM class, the UKSimRacing Mercedes driver, chasing after Warrington in the TK Sport Ferrari. And as they come out of the Mercedes arena, you can see Johnson staying ever close as they get ready to head onto the anchors for turn 6. But right now, a bit further back, and this is not the half of the lap where the Mercedes is able to shine too much. Although I say that, Warrington going a bit deep, they're coming through 6. And I wonder if Warrington is struggling with a bit of tyre degradation this late on in the race. We do sometimes see it, particularly on the mid-engine rear-wheel drive machines. They do start to really bite into those rear tyres in the final 5 minutes as they've been pushed hard. But as Johnson continues to try and close up here, we still got to go some way as they come out of the hairpin. But he is staying well within half a second as they make the way up the hill. But as they charge on through, meanwhile, we look back up to the battle for P2 over on in the elite class, and the Norwegian of Håkon Grebstad still keeping Sherwood at bay. But now they battle coming out of 4. Sherwood there looks to the cutback. Grebstad covers off the centre of the road. We'll keep it clean, boys, as they make the way out towards turn number 6. And Grebstad keeps it in the centre. Sherwood looks around. He looks the other side in the end. And right now, Sherwood doing everything he can, literally dancing on his toes, trying to harass and harry the Grebstad as he makes his way up towards turn number 8 now. And as they power their way through, of course, not long to go. We've only got 30 seconds. That means this will be the final lap of this race. As Sherwood comes in extremely hot on the brakes and overcooks it there. And Grebstad just about avoids it. My goodness, the two of them there could not have been closer. And Sherwood coming in hot like a ballistic missile there. But thankfully, it doesn't find a target. It just goes wayward. And as they make the way up towards turn number 11, Grebstad, their hands have cat-like reflexes to see that one coming as they come into left-hander. As they roll the way through, Joe Newman not close enough to capitalise, only there to witness it at a distance. And as they make their way through turn number 12 and down towards 13, well, whilst they watch on at a distance to this man, Daniel Thomas, who has led this race after an early mistake from Damien Lobbett. He's never let it go, albeit he's had to fight extremely hard for it. But the Welshman here comes up towards the final corner. He'll make it his second win of the season, and it'll be for Protect Motorsport that Daniel Thomas comes across the line. Your race winner in round 5 of the GT3 Leagues. He comes on through to win by 5.2 seconds in the elite and overall categories over Håkon Grebstad for Ignium Motorsport and P3 Sam Sherwood for Protect Motorsport, making it a 1-3 for the Protect Motorsport team. Joe Newman P4, Martin Tillin P5, Django Taylor P7 behind Matthew Crisp, and then it'll be Peter Cox who crosses the line, your winner in the Pro Class there for UKSimRacing, ahead of his peers, who will shortly be John Eddowes who comes to line P2 in the Pro Class there for TC Sport Kimmy, and Aaron McGregor takes another win in the AM Class there, really digging in now with regards to that championship campaign. David Lawson there, P3 in the Pro Class there for Symphony Esports Weight. Just didn't have enough today to change Eddowes, but was close all the way through. And then very shortly on his debut, he's not going to finish inside the top 5. He's going to do better than that. He's going to come home in P2. Eric Stegen is your second place finisher in the AM Class there, the privateer from Norway, crosses the line ahead of Darren Sharples by 10.5 seconds. He's definitely one to watch out for here in Stegen, as meanwhile Sharples comes through the final corner to complete the AM podium there in a difficult day for the 777 driver, but still a great recovery to P3 ahead of Casper Brotler, who finishes P4 there in the AM class. And then we've still got more drivers to come through here in the AMs. Matt Maddox P5 and a great day for BDM Racing ahead of Michael Warrington P6, Mark Johnson P7. And and it'll be Daniel Pays in P8. Then not to work out today for the Old Dudes in Cars driver, and then Eden Frazina finishing P9, just ahead of James Connolly at the finish line there to complete all of your finishers on the lead lap. In fact, we've still got a couple more to go. We've got Dion Wren here, P7. Wasn't to be his day today in the 45 car, but showing great pace at the start of the race, and he'll definitely build on that. But I think with Dion Wren finishing their P32 overall on the lead lap, that is all of your finishers accounted for, ladies and gentlemen. But what a thriller from start to finish, and what I would agree with you there, Brooker, wow indeed. It has been an incredible day of racing. So much to unpack and talk about across the 45 minutes, and well, whilst we can't unpack it all now, what we can do is show you the race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. Now, of course, as is the tradition, we start off by covering the overall top 10, and then we'll point out in the overall finishing positions where our individual sets of podiums finish before focusing on our individual classes. And we can see here that in round number 5 of the UKSimRacing GT3 League Season 9 at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit today, Daniel Thomas taking the win in the end by 5.1 seconds over Håkon Grebstad. It was a close fight all the way through, but in the end, I think Grebstad's opportunity to take the win was circumvented through that contact with Sam Sherwood, and in the end, it was a battle for P2 between Grebstad and Sherwood, which Grebstad came out on top of. And in the end, with Sam Sherwood at P3, it would be a double podium for Protect Motorsport ahead of Joe Newman in P4 for Simran Racing Red, and a good, consistent drive for Joe Newman. Perhaps the unsung hero of today in terms of just finding his way through the field. And then Martin Tillenfish in P5 for Tinky Simsport Corpa in the end, after what was looking to be a potential outside opportunity of a podium, but a top 5, he'll be pleased with that all the same. The priority of Matthew Crisp for that late instant with himself and Jacko Taylor, finishing P6 ahead of Taylor in P7 for Tiki Simsport Car Mate, with Peter Cox there, your pro winner for UKSimRacing at P8, and a brilliant drive, a faultless to a T drive there from the UKSimRacing driver ahead of Sean at Valandia P9 for Tiki Simsport Gimme, and then Daniel Lee. The best he could achieve today was P10 overall and P9 in class, but I think the majority of that was compounded by the mistake or the instant at turn number 11. Again, we don't know what triggered it, but we saw him off circuit, and it cost him very dear when he was looking to run comfortably inside the top 5 early on. Best of the rest out in P11, Ryan Davies for Tiki Simsport Car Mate. And as we continue to focus now on our podium finishers in the Pro and the AM classes, we can see there P15 for John Eddowes overall, second place in the the pro class of Tiki Simsport Kimmy in another strong performance today. Not quite the win, but he'll take that P2 with open arms, just ahead of Aaron McGregor, P16, your AM winner today. And the privateer followed up by third place in the pro class for David Lois and the Symphony Esports white driver. And as we carry our way on down through the overall finishing positions, we can then see on his debut P23 overall the privateer of Eric Stegen, who taking P2 in the AM class. A fantastic drive from him ahead of Darren Sharples, P3 in the AM class to complete the AM podium, P24 overall. Now we come on to our individual classes as we continue to look on down there through what is the overall finishing positions. And just to point out, we did have a number of retirements overall, and those retirements were in the end, I do believe it was Stuart Brown, Adrian Kukulis, Simon Hartley and Ben Watkinson were the last classified finisher of this race, being, I believe it was Joshua Pratt 2 laps down. We also had the retirements of Chris Eddersford, Cy Anthony and Mark Collicott. But coming on to those individual class finishing positions now, we can see here in the elite class, firstly, Daniel Thomas taking that win for Protect Motorsport by 5.1 seconds over Håkon Grebstad with Sam at Sherwood P3. Joe Newman P4, as previously mentioned, ahead of Martin Tillin with Matthew Crisp, Jacko Taylor, Sean Valandia, Daniel Lee and Ryan Davies completing at the top 10. And then Alex Hill, best of rest P11, not to be his day today, and being pipped to the post by Ryan Davies to finish inside the top 10. Only what was in the end half a second, in fact a second between the two of them. And then Dean Powell P12 ahead of Nathan Foster with Ryan Moles P14, Damien Lovatt P15, Joshua Pratt P16, and then the retirement of Cy Anthony P17 last but not least. Then coming on to the pro class, we can see here that Peter Cox taking the win in the end by 17 seconds for UKSimRacing over Tiki Simsport Kimmy's John Eddowes, with David Larson in at P3 there for Symphony Esports White, only a further 1.6 seconds behind. That goes to show you how close Eddowes and Larson's pace was over the entirety of the race, with Darren Fellows at P4 there for BDM Racing. A good performance on his debut in the series for Fellows, and then Colin Patterson P5 there, ahead of Edward Knight, Dion Wren, Stuart Brown, Chris Eddersford with that late retirement, and Mark Collicott who retired first and foremost in the Pro Class there. P10, I believe, will be considered as a did not finish, as he did not make the halfway point of this race with 20, was in the end 23 laps turned. But as we then come on to the AM class, we can see here, after 45 minutes of racing, Aaron McGregor making it another win, this time by 26.7 seconds over Eric Stegen, with Darren Sharples at P3 there. And what a brilliant podium. All three privateers raining high with old dudes in cars. Is Casper Brotner looking to finish on the podium, but in the end losing out with that second attempt at a three-way pass. Not quite working out, but still Brotner will learn from that one. But he's definitely achieved himself an accolade of a potential overtake of the season for the first three-wide moment. And then Matt Maddox P5 for BDM Racing, ahead of Michael Warrington for TT Simsport Car Marte. Not on the pace day, Warrington, and also a couple of upsets early on in the race, ruining what could have been a great performance for the TT Simsport driver. But then Daniel Pays at P7 ahead of Eden Frazina, with James Conley and Mark Johnson completing the top 10. And a special mention there to Eden Frazina for what essentially ruined his race early on with a major incident, and also for Adrian Kukulis, who dropped all the way outside of the podium, running P2 at one point after contact with another car coming through the kink of 13, which saw him retire 5 laps from the finish. Jack Bullen at P11 there, best the rest a lap down as he finished. Adrian Kukulis P12, and then TT Simsport Corpus Simon Hartley P13 ahead of Ben Watkinson, who stayed in it all the way to the end. To be fair, Watkinson never gave up, and in fact not a retirement for Ben Watkinson. He did finish 7 laps down at the very end compared to his class winner. But those are the finishing positions for all of our drivers, ladies and gentlemen. And now it is time for us to take a brief breather before we return in approximately 10 minutes' time for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. It's definitely been theatrics and a thriller at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. But what do our drivers have to say about it? We'll be back soon to find out all that and more. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss it. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews with our selected volunteers. And today we've had an assortment of volunteers, primarily from the elite class, and also we'll be hearing from one of our pro class drivers. We started off with Martin Tillin, the Tiki SimSport Corpo driver, who had a very strong performance today and really got to enjoy a drive inside the top 5 in the elite class. Before we then come on to Alex Hill from Tiki SimSport, who had a difficult start to his day but managed to turn things around quite late in the day and move up through the elite field. And then we'll be hearing from ProTech Motorsport's Ryan Moles, who had a start that he did not desire, and in the end it was all about trying to bring the car home and get some points on the board. Before we then come on to our pro winner for today, Peter Cox from UKSimRacing, who enjoyed a strong run up front and got to nip and tuck with his elite counterparts. But we start off with Martin Tillin, of course, and as he does get ready to join us now. And we're just asking for him to join us in the Discord voice chat. It'll be interesting to hear his perspective on today's race. And as he does join me now, Martin, a strong performance from yourself, coming back right into the thick of things after a week's break. And well, the first question I have to ask you is, did you compete in the Bathurst 12 hours just before this race?
I did not do the Bathurst, no. I can't commit to specials because of my work schedule, unfortunately.
Well, with a little bit less tiredness perhaps on the limbs compared to some of your peers, you definitely showed today that you're not one to be trifled with when it comes racing. Having qualified P8 and moving up to P5, and that's where you'd finish in the end in the race, it must be a good resumption to your championship campaign.
It's a good feeling, having gone back on my own promise to myself that I wouldn't drive the BMW. I find myself back in the car again. It's really strong. It feels good after being in the Macca for a few weeks to be back in the BMW. To know it still feels good, but it has changed a bit from previous seasons. So it feels good to be back in the fight again. It was really strong around here today.
We definitely look strong and in your capable hands as well. And just take us through qualifying firstly. Putting yourself P8 on the grid, we have seen you competing for that second half of the top 10 regularly this season. Did it all hook up today in qualifying, or was there a bit more time out there?
I actually made a mistake on my first lap. I only had 2 laps. I did my first try lap and had an X on the exit of the Mercedes arena. So I reset instead of finishing and going on to do another one. So I could have done a double out lap instead, but instead I reset and just did 2 straight flying laps. But I thought I had a little bit of time. I lost probably in the middle sector, being my worst part of the track. I probably could have made another 10th or 2, but who knows. If the lap had come together and it was better, I reckon my personal best for the week in practice, at least anyway, was a low 56, so like a 56.2, 56.3. So it was very close to my personal best, but I think I had time in me really. But
well, with the time that you potentially had out there, you definitely went to show it in the race, and a clean start for yourself as we just watch it back on the broadcast at the moment. What was your game plan in this race as a whole, given that, of course, we had the endurance race previously, we've halved the time duration back to 45 minutes. Were you looking to make early gains, or just wait, watch, and listen for what happens?
well, through my practice this week, when I was doing my race stints, I was just seeing how many laps I could get in, and when I was coming into the pits in my practice, I was coming in with just under a lap of fuel. So my thought was, do I try and fuel save a little bit and try and get an extra lap out of it? I only needed to save half a lap of fuel, which is possible in half an hour. Just lift and coast from me clutching in a few corners. But in the end, it was just an outright brawl. I mean, it was nuts how close everyone was. And then that strategy went out the window, and I just went for it.
Oh, indeed, and by it going for it, we saw in the open lap a number of drivers in front of you falling foul, including, of course, class leader and race leader Damien Lobbett having that horrific moment going through the Schumacher S. We also saw a couple of laps later, Daniel Lee getting it wrong into turn at number 11, and places coming your way. And as you moved up the order, of course, at one point moving all the way up into the podium positions, were you thinking it was potentially a P3 on the cards?
It was in the back of my mind, but I knew that Håkon was very fast, and he wasn't that far behind after he got back on the track after his incident. I got a lot of luck today, and there was potential there. I think if I had better race pace overall, I think with the tyre drop off being an issue this season with all the cars, nursing those tyres around to get the best performance when you really need it. You just got to keep putting it in and in and in without stopping really, and it was tough. Yeah, if I had the slightly better, faster race pace average, I would probably have done a little better.
Well, even though perhaps the race pace wasn't quite up to scratch where you'd like it to be, we definitely got to see you delivering lap after lap and keeping it smart and sensible. And just take us through here, of course. You've been away for a week of the racing, like everybody has. How do you get back into the zone as soon as possible? Because, of course, you want to carry that championship momentum forward, but at the same time, it's almost as if it never goes away no matter how long the break, does it?
No, it was nice to have a break. I felt like we should have just carried on, but I think we all needed a break from it. It was a difficult decision to change car. I thought it was the right time to do it. But yeah, the week break, I think we all needed it. But with the special events, there was always a little sneaky chance of a good finish.
Oh, indeed. And just with regards to going to the BMW, of course, making it keeping it calm and whatnot, what makes it different compared to the McLaren for the uninitiated?
The McLaren is a little bit more sensitive on the throttle. You have to be much smoother with the inputs, whereas the BMW, it's very good at direction change, especially with a much easier throttle control. Be a little bit more aggressive on the apexes, a little bit earlier, and there's not much oversteer, whereas the McLaren had a little bit of oversteer if you were a little early on the throttle, and it was very twitchy through the high-speed corners. So the BMW felt very stable. It was quick as well in a straight line, but it wasn't the best in the toe or down the straight. So, I mean, the Macca probably would have been a better choice to stick with it, but I feel the time was, I think I should probably have stuck with the BMW.
Oh, indeed, and I think your choice to BMW has gone with you well today. And well, it's not just about today, we've got 3 more rounds to go. And looking ahead to our next round, of course, we do make our way back down under for many of our drivers. And it'll be your first visit to Mount Panorama this year at the Bathurst circuit. How are you feeling for a trip onto the Australian mountain?
Oh, I haven't raced Bathurst for a very long time. Through my practice, I've managed to do this week, being part of the 12-hour. I did the VRS as the officials. I was miles off the pace. A few seconds I got to get up. So, being I haven't driven it for a while, and with all these new stuff happening with all the cars and the tyre changes since I last drove it, I need to get a few laps into practice. But I'm miles off the pace compared to what I've seen others do. So I'm a little worried. But we have to take it one race at a time.
Oh, most definitely. Step by step, as you're saying, you never know. Come this time next week, you could be on the podium or definitely inside the top 5. But just before we do let you go, Martin, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, big thanks again to UKSimRacing for letting me drive in their team this season. It's been fantastic. Not results in the first half that we wanted, but all the while it's a fantastic team to work with.
Well, I'm sure they'll appreciate that, Martin. But with that, thank you for joining us in the interview room. Fantastic racing from yourself and a superb drive to P5. And we look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time down under.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it.
All the best.
Thank you very much.
So hearing that from Martin Tinning, your elite driver in the number 3 at BMW for Tiki Simsport Corpa. And interesting to hear his perspective there on making that decisive decision to move to the BMW M4 as part of the car swap away from the McLaren, and feeling as though perhaps the McLaren would have been stronger this race day and perhaps for the remainder of the season, but the BMW boding well with regards to its ability to be strong under direction change, having that stability as well. Not the fastest on the straights, but having straight line speed. I think Tilling's definitely one to watch out for, where he could potentially sneak a podium in as the season goes on, because he's definitely showing the grit and determination. Wasn't to be today, made the most of the opportunities presented to him, however, and that's what it's all about, and I think he'll be making those opportunities again down under at Bathurst. But as we now come on to our second interview, we're very shortly hearing from none other than Alex Hill from Tiki Simsport. And well, it was a bit of a difficult day for Alex Hill, there's no question about it, but one where he dug in and did everything he could to try and get the best possible result out of the car. And well, as he gets ready to join us, it'll be interesting to hear his thoughts on a midfield that never seemed to calm down in the elite class. But as we do ask Mr. Hill to join us here, it'll be interesting to hear his perspective as well on driving the Ferrari around the circuit. But as he joins us now, Alex, good to have you here with us. Perhaps not the result you were expecting today, given the fact qualifying didn't go too well, but in the end, digging deep and trying to make your way up through the order in the elite class in the race, moving from what was P16 in class to P11 come the very end. Was today always going to be a difficult one, or has today not gone the way you expected it to?
I think today was always going to be slightly difficult. Unfortunately, due to my direct drive wheel having a fault, which meant I had to go back at the start of the season. I've done very little racing this season, so I was kind of expected based off my pace. That's where I was starting. But actually, once I got into the race, my race pace would have indicated that I probably should have been quite a few positions further up if I'd actually managed to qualify well. But I was able to have quite a good race with a few people. I think Dean Powell had an interesting time with him for a few laps. I didn't have a best start. I was having to fight my way through at the beginning and then catch my way back up to the group. But yeah, I think just keeping it on the track, keeping the car steady, and just enjoying myself to get back was the key to it, and just having a bit of fun. No pressure on me this season. Since I've missed so many rounds, I can just have fun and race for the sake of racing. Nothing really in points-wise for me.
Oh, most definitely. Having a bit of fun is what it's all about if you're not right up there. But just quickly to qualifying, of course, not quite putting in the lap you perhaps wanted, but just to comment on the fact the top 17, which you were at the very bottom of, separated from pole position to 17th place by just under a second.
Well, yeah, it's always going to be very competitive at the top. That's why you need to get those good qualifying laps in. Perhaps I should do a bit more practice for that in the future. That's certainly something I could look into. But when it's that close, you need to get those qualifying laps in. Otherwise, you are going to have to fight through the field, and it's much easier to gain those positions in qualifying than it is on the racetrack.
Oh, indeed. And speaking about gaining positions on the circuit, of course, the Nürburgring considered to be a bit of a chalk and cheese circuit. Some love it because it does generate close overtaking. Others say it doesn't create overtaking opportunities. Your thought on passing other drivers here? 'Cause you really did have to get your elbows out to battle hard.
Yeah, you need to elbows out to get past here. It's not a track where the overtakes will come by being a little bit nice and polite. You need to put your nose on the inside and make sure the driver is aware that you are going for that position. So it is an interesting from that point of view. It can produce trains though, because once you start battling and people realise once they start battling that they allow the traffic behind to catch back up again. So there's always that difficult decision of, do I settle in and try to save some fuel versus am I going to progress more by battling and trying to gain my way through positions? And I think I came here to have a bit of fun and have a race today. So regardless if it would have been better for me to save fuel, I was like, well, I'm just going to push. So I wanted to have that race, and I think a few others around me had that same idea as well.
Oh, indeed. Look, so everybody was really getting their teeth into the fighting, yourself included. And well, with regards to the strategy and pushing, we know that the Ferrari is one of those cars which perhaps it doesn't have the best acceleration compared to its peers, but when it gets the run, it can definitely go for it. Did you find there was a particular part of the circuit where you were looking to make those moves, perhaps the latter half of the circuit?
Certainly near the end, and sort of like the long straights, definitely the best points. On there, I had a couple of times where I had people side by side for me pulling out of a few of the corners, and it was evident the Ferrari was slightly slower at that point. But by the time you got to the end of the straights, the Ferrari began pulling away again. So, it's just a case of which car suits people. I started the season in the Lamborghini, which had the exact opposite problem, or immediately pulled away from the corners and then just didn't have a pace at the end of a straight. So it's completely different cars from that point of view. The Ferrari probably favourable for the rest of the season as well, but it's you've got to make use of your car's strengths, and the Ferrari is good in a straight line, and good over the bumps as well, so you could properly take some of those curbs.
Oh, indeed, and we got to see really pushing the Ferrari to its limit all day today in terms of the racing. And looking ahead to next week, of course, we head down under to Mount Panorama Raceway in Australia. How are you feeling for the trip to the mountain?
Well, unfortunately, I missed the 12-hour event due to other commitments, so I haven't done quite as much practice as other people may have done. But Bathurst has been a track that I've always enjoyed. it is again a track I'm going to have to practice qualifying on, though, because if you're getting stuck behind people on the mountain can be an incredibly frustrating experience. But hopefully the Ferrari will allow me to get those runs on the straights, which it does show that incredible pace at Bathurst. I'm looking at some of the races which have occurred sort of at the 12-hour event. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope that we have a clean race there, and I hope everyone manages to get through fine.
Oh, fingers crossed, and we definitely look forward to seeing how you can conquer the mountain in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Alex, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, so I'd like to thank everybody at UKSR for putting the league on again this season. And all the drivers, because we seem to have a lot of retention from people this season, so that is an excellent thing to see. Furthermore, thank you to all my teammates who are driving with us. A bit of a shout out to John Eddowes as well, who's currently doing very well in his division, but even if he's a bit too shy to come on to the interview and talk about it.
Well, I'm sure John will appreciate the shout out there, despite his shyness. Come on, John, we want you on an interview by the end of the season.
John, on the interview. I know he's watching, so we need to get him on by the end of the season. I'll do my best. I'll push him for you.
Oh, brilliant. But coming back to yourself, a brilliant performance today from yourself. Good to see you enjoying it out there. And we do look forward to seeing how you get on at Bathurst in a week's time.
Thank you very much.
All the best. So hearing there from our second interview of today, the elite driver of Alex Hill, or Xander Hill as he's also known in the 276 Tiki SimSport Ferrari. Interesting with regards to, of course, the car swap from the Lamborghini to the Ferrari and the technical issues that he's had with his equipment holding him back in the first half of the season. So he's got nothing to lose and he's gone in today and just absolutely enjoyed it. And to be fair, that's what it's all about. And racing fair, racing clean, and we definitely got to see plenty of smart racing from Alex all the way from start to finish. And we're interested to see that comment as well with regards to the fact that everybody around him and then really just going all in on the racing here. Nobody really thinking too much about strategy in that hunt to just get inside the bottom portion of the top 10 in the elite class. But again, that's a reflection, much like in qualifying, just how close the class is in terms of drivers and how when everybody's evenly matched, everybody has got to be right up at 100% non-stop from start to finish, and that's where the potential mistakes can come in. And will there be any mistakes on the mountain next week? Well, if there are, they could be extremely costly. But now coming on to our third interview of today, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard from two elite drivers and you hear from one more. We're going to be very shortly hearing from Ryan Moles, who had a very difficult race compared to his peers who we previously interviewed, but at the same time I think he tried to make the most of the situation presented to him, and as he gets ready to join us, it'll be interesting to hear his perspective on today in terms of how it all played out from start to finish. But the ProTech Motorsport driver unfortunately not up there at the end versus his peers, even though perhaps he'd like to be. But as he joins me now, Ryan, it looked difficult out there from the outset. A P20 overall come the finish line, a P14 in class. Not the result you wanted, but it sounds as though it didn't go quite right in qualifying, and then that just translated into a very difficult start in the race.
Yeah, it was a weekend to forget, really. It was a round that I was looking forward to because I wanted to try and follow on from the first half of the season. But like you say, qualifying was terrible and the race was just, it was an uphill battle.
Now, talking about your car first, you decided to stay with the Audi R8 LMS. Was there any thought of potentially switching the car during the mid-season break?
There was a little bit of thought maybe going to the BMW. It's a car that I've driven a lot before and I'm comfortable with. But, you know, I just love driving the Audi. There's something about it. I've been pretty quick with it recently. So I thought I might as well just stick with it and just try and prove everyone else wrong that you don't have to change car to be quick. So, yeah.
Well, indeed, we've seen you be very quick in the Audi in the first half of the season, and coming on to qualifying, it looked tough out in qualifying, as we were just remarking with Alex Hill. Top 17 separated by, in the end, 9/10 and 9/100. So close, and you found yourself there, P14 in that qualifying order. Just take us through, how was qualifying for yourself, and also the closeness? I mean, you have to be finding the tiniest bits of time to gain even a place now.
Yeah, it was actually pretty tough. So the first lap was just like a banker just to get a time on the board and then just to try and improve from that. And I think that was the only time I did actually. I don't even know if I improved off that. But like you said, the first sector is a weird one. It just feels like there's no grip there at all. So I was losing like maybe a couple tenths there just trying to fight the car for that. And then the rest of the lap, I mean, you try. It's so easy just to overdrive and to try and chase that lap time. It kind of puts you off. But I was definitely struggling more towards the end of the lap. The last corner before the chicane, and then well that chicane as one as well. It's very easy to get a slowdown or to clip it wrong and spin and lose loads of time, and that's where I was really struggling really.
Well, those struggles went through qualifying into the race, and just take us through because there was a bit of a nasty incident on the opening lap.
Yeah, it was a fault of my own. You know, I mean, the race start. We had the race briefing about trying to leave, like, to try and bunch the field up because I know in previous like races and stuff you can go green through the chicane. So I thought coming out of that last chicane on the warm up lap that I was gonna have time to get round the corner and line up, but as I got round the final corner, I found myself a second behind and was already green. So that kind of like threw me off a little bit straight away. So I was again trying to get onto the back of people, which I did. And then as it continued up into the chicane, again, my bloody nightmare of the course, I got a slowdown. So I thought, right, okay, that's fine. So I'll try and serve it as quickly as I can, pulled over, clutched in to try and save some fuel. Accidental downshift to first gear, came up off the clutch and found myself facing the wrong way. And then having to wait till everyone else came through and found myself right at the back of the pack, unfortunately.
We did see that moment. We didn't quite know why, and thank you for clarifying that it was with the clutch and the first gear downshift. And we have seen a couple of moments where drivers have made mistakes on the clutch. I mean, we just need to look back to Monza with Sam Congre's moment on the formation lap. So you're no stranger to the clutch catching a driver out. But at the same time, from that point onwards, we saw you having to really make a recovery drive out of this race and battle your way up through the order. And what was it like battling with the AMs and the Pro drivers? Because they're all fighting one another. They don't have to fight you, but they're also trying to use you as a bit of a chess piece on one another.
Yeah, it's definitely a strange situation to find yourself in because it's like you're on your own, like in your class. It's like it's easy to get into your mind, like, what's the point? Why am I racing? But like you say, it was good fun fighting my way back through and getting some like overtakes. And there were some AMs that moved over, but there were some AMs as well that were quite defensive. I'm like, I don't expect them to move out of the way, but like you say, it's probably more beneficial for them if they just like let you just slip in here and there. But yeah, it was good. It was good to get that experience back in because you don't really get it too much in other races. Most of the time, it is just like single file and you're just in a train. But yeah, it's good to see that you can still do it.
Oh, indeed, and we did see you enjoying yourself fighting way on through and recovering to what was in the end P14 class overall P20. With things going sideways, of course, what was the strategy plan if it hadn't gone wrong at the start? Was it just to pit around the midpoint? Because we saw a lot of drivers go as long as possible to the 27th minute and decide, right, we're all coming in.
I think it would have been just to go as long as possible, like it always has been for me. I just try and just go till the tank runs up and just put in whatever's required. I did see a few people pit early. I think Håkon pit, and I know that he was like obviously speaking to my teammates as well. They were in battle for first place overall. So I did try and maybe make a move on him to try and benefit my teammates as well. But at the same time, I wanted to like be respectful of it as well. I didn't want to like ruin their race and like mess up my own as well. But yeah, yeah.
Indeed, understandable. And now looking ahead from today to a week's time when we head down under for Bathurst, will you be visiting Bathurst for what is twice in a row in 2 weeks? Did you compete in the Bathurst 12-hour?
Yeah, I will be there, and I did compete over the weekend. It was a lot of fun. Unfortunate result, we finished P8 overall, just me and Aaron McGregor as well from the league. We was on course for a good result, but unfortunate things happen. Bathurst things happen, shall I say. It left its mark on us, so...
Oh, indeed. And well, we look forward to seeing you take to the mountain again. Excuse me. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, yeah. It's a track that I love. I love lapping it, and I do want to. I am hoping for a better result there next week as well, because I do want to try and like fight on in the championship and get back up there again.
Oh, indeed. We look forward to seeing you charge up through the field. Well, we've seen you take a win once this season already at Daytona, so can you make it 2 out of 2? That will be the question. But also, just before we do let you go, Ryan, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
A shout out to yourself for being a good support on the commentary. I know you do a really good job week in, week out. So yeah, thank you, and obviously to the ProTech boys for being supportive throughout the season, and to everyone else on the grid for some good racing.
Well, sure, your colleagues will appreciate the shout out, and thank you, Ryan, for the feedback on the broadcast. But thank you to you for joining me in the interview room. Well, not to be the result today, but still, congratulations for making it through to the checkered flag, and hopefully the mountain is one you can conquer in a week's time.
Thanks, Paul.
All the best. So hearing there from Ryan Moles, our elite class driver, our third interview of today, and the ProTech Motorsport driver explaining what exactly happened when we saw him go around at the final corner on the opening lap, and then a clutch and in clutch with a first gear downshift, causing the car to spin on around. More nasty moment for the Audi engine, and nasty moment for Ryan himself, in the ProTech Motorsport driver never giving in, keeping his head down and just pushing on and seeing what he could recover to in the end, and it would be P14 in class P20 overall, and enjoying some moments battling his way through the pros and the AM drivers. I think getting a feel for how they behave, and you never know, it could become important next time at the mountain should he find himself behind some of them when they're battling. Alternatively, later on in the season, perhaps when we go into our final round, indeed that endurance race at Sebring. All vital information, but definitely not the result he wanted, and he'll be looking to turn things around next week. As we now get ready to speak to our fourth and final interview of today, it'll be none other than Peter Cox from UKSimRacing. And well, the BMW driver had a fantastic day today, looking absolutely unstoppable from start to finish in class. And well, as we get ready for him to join us in the interview room, we just see a brief note there from what is Marco Villela there with regards to how can I see info of the leagues, and we'll come on to that, Marco, after we've spoken to our final interview of today, as Peter will be joining us hopefully very shortly. But the quick summary is, if you go to our website uksimracing.co.uk, you can find out all the information of our leagues. Alternatively, join our Discord, but more information on that very shortly, as we are just waiting for Peter Cox to join us now. In fact, I think he may be just taking a little bit of a moment here, ladies and gentlemen, but definitely it'll be interesting to hear his thoughts on that qualifying lap that put him inside the overall top 10. And as he joins us now, Peter, appreciate you waiting, and you're our final interview of today. But what a day you have had at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. A win in the pro class, and from start to finish, you looked absolutely indomitable today. A pole lap in qualifying, and then just running away with proceedings. Were you expecting it to be like this?
No. Not at all. I've had an awful week doing some IMSA races around Nürburgring, but the practice obviously paid off, because I wasn't expecting to be up with the elites in quali. I knew I had 56s in me, and you know, I did a kind of a 2-lap quali followed by a 2-lap quali. So when I finished the quali and I went back and looked at the results and found that I was the top pro, I thought, okay, other people's results are going to come in and I'm just going to go down. So. But it didn't, and that's why I gritted.
Well, indeed, and a superb qualifying session for yourself. But I have to ask, when you took to the grid, did that change the way you looked at this race? Because you were surrounded by a sea of elite drivers, knowing that your closest rival, John Eddowes, was quite a way back on the grid.
Well, absolutely. So that's the kind of mistake I made at Silverstone. I'm pretty sure I qualified well there. I don't think I was the best pro, but I think I ended up at Silverstone actually in the lead, and then kind of had an instant that all went south. But this kind of gave me an opportunity and a problem. The opportunity was, I knew I was the top pro in quality by some distance, and I knew that the elites behind me would be difficult to overtake. The problem that I had was that I'm not racing the people who are around me. and I just didn't want to get tangled up with them. So there were times when I needed to be careful and times when I didn't. But it kind of, the main thing is to keep the car on the track, and at least I managed to do that. A couple of slowdowns, but that was about it.
Oh, indeed. And speaking about being tied up with the elites, we did see, particularly after the pit stop, you getting brushed up in a couple of close battles, including the likes of Sam Sherwood, as we see you making your way on around turns 1 and 2 on the broadcast currently, and Sherwood close behind. Was there ever a sort of temptation to fight for position, or was it always sort of, okay, they're coming, I've just got to steer clear at this point, don't do anything silly or dangerous?
No, to be honest, I was I was fighting for position. Well, I was probably 75% fighting for position throughout. If somebody was going to send it, I'd just given it to them. Again, because we're racing in class and we're not really racing each other. There's nothing. There's only pride to be gained by being overtaking other elites. So the most important thing is going to be the points at the end of the season, and that's what I needed to do. And having had a couple of disasters in the first half of the season, I definitely need to consolidate whatever I can get.
Oh, most definitely. And in fact, with today's result, that makes you the 5th winner in 5 races in the Pro class. We have yet to get a double winner in the class. And looking ahead to next time at Mount Panorama at Bathurst, I have to ask firstly, did you compete in the 12-hour event?
I did. It went the kind of normal way. It always starts with a lot of hope. And we had a couple of incidents which meant that we were kind of lots of laps down with I think 6 hours to go. It just wasn't worth continuing. So, but obviously it's good practice. So that was worthwhile doing.
Oh, most definitely. And with that practice in hand, how are you feeling your chances are to conquer the mountain in your pro class next week?
So I think we all know that the most important thing is to, especially at Bathurst, is to keep the car on the track and survive. Because there is going to be incidents. There's lots of walls. You want to keep it out of those walls, and you also want to. You're going to have some luck on your side because there's bound to be people stationary on the mountain that you've just got to try and avoid as best you can. So I think there's going to be some fortune involved. I hope I'm on the right side of that fortune. In terms of speed at Bathurst, I don't think I'm one of the fastest. I think it also depends a lot on temps as well. So, and I'm going to have to do some work on the setup because I think I've got a kind of a setup problem at Bathurst that means things that's why it might have gone south in the 12 hours. So we'll see. Who knows?
We do look forward to seeing how you get on in Australia in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Peter, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, cool. So the guys back at UKSimRacing, so that's Mark and Chris. They're very helpful, and it's good to work in a team. Thanks to all the organisers. Thanks to Si. Thanks to yourself, Paul. And thanks to all the other competitors as well. These league races, they're just a blast. They're great to be out on track with people who are very respectful drivers and fast and competent and all good. So thanks all.
Oh, well, I'm sure everyone will appreciate the gratitude and glad to hear you enjoying yourself, Peter. But with that, congratulations once again on an absolutely dominant display today. And, well, will it continue down under? We'll look forward to seeing whether you can make it happen and become our first pro repeat winner next time out.
Cool. Cheers, Paul.
All the best. So hearing there from Peter Cox, our pro winner today from UKSimRacing in the number 68 car. And we're there talking about the trials and tribulations of the Bathurst 12 hour, and we're coming straight over to this race and using all the practice from running IMSA racing sessions earlier in the week and making it count. Didn't expect that practice to put him so far up the order in terms of pace, but in the end all that practice made perfect. I think if he can dial out those potential setup issues and put the qualms and worries of the 12 hours of Bathurst behind him, could Peter Cox be our first repeat winner in class? I think there is a very high possibility, but of course he'll have everybody nipping at his toes to try and do that as well in that accolade, including Alex Gaines and what is John Eddowes, just named two of many. It is a pro class that does not look to be a bait in terms of the intensity of the battle inside the top 10 at the moment, from P1 through to P10, and that's why we absolutely love it. Indeed, Peter enjoying the closest of the racing, but can he find a way to stay one step ahead, because nobody has been able to do that so far. Could he be that man? But as we now come from our interviews, just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, we have interviewed tonight the 4 drivers as follows from start to finish. You first heard from Martin Tillen, the Tiki SimSport Corporate driver in the number 3 machine. He was in the elite class. You then heard from fellow elite driver of Alex Hill in the 276 Tiki SimSport machine. And then you also heard from the elite driver of Ryan Moles in the number 18 ProTech Motorsport Audi, before we finally heard from our pro driver of Peter Cox in the number 68 UKSimRacing BMW M4. But thank you to all 4 of our drivers for being available for interview. We really do appreciate it, and I'm sure you guys and girls do at home as well. And now, well, of course, we would at this point be bringing you the updated championship standings after 5 rounds of 8. But unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, due to a technical issue which has been investigated behind the scenes, we're not able to bring you the updated standings at this point in time. So what we will need to do instead is present you with the updated standings as of next round. And we may be able to bring you those standings before and after the race as well, just to fill you in on the entire picture. We'll see what we can do, but there'll definitely be the standings back post round number 6. That way you can stay up to date with everything that's happened in the championship. It's unfortunate there, but we won't give you an update on the standings, but what we will do is say thank you very much for watching. And if you have enjoyed the show today and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community, then why not check out our official website, that's uksimracing.co.uk. Alternatively, you can go to our Twitter, but why would you want to go to our website first and foremost? Well, to answer your question there, Marco Villela, you can see all the information regarding our upcoming leagues, all of our social addresses and everything in between, including the link to our Discord, which you do need to join if you want to be part of any of our upcoming series. So that's why you'll want to go to our Racing Up website first and foremost. But if you don't want to go to our website, you can always go to our official Twitter. That is twitter.com/UKSimRacing_, whereby you can keep up to date with the latest information regarding upcoming broadcasts and also the trials and tribulations of the UK Sim Racing esports team in major sim racing events, including the recent Bathurst 12 hour. But we must also say a big thank you to our affiliates, and our 4 affiliates there listed on screen are in order. Firstly, Swallow Omeda Sim Racing Coaching, and their YouTube web address is available on screen there. And the reason why you should listen to Swallow Omeda as a sim racing coach above all others is, whereas most sim racing coaches will overfeed you with information and essentially say to you can improve 101 things, Swallow Omeda takes a different approach, whereby focusing on what you're looking to achieve from the coaching session, where it's a single tenth, a whole second, or alternatively find a more consistent way of drive or something else. Swallow Omeda will tailor the coaching specifically for you and recommend that you focus on 3 particular major aspects, which once you've improved and honed those, then additional information will be provided. That's the next 3 things you can focus on and such forth. So that way you as the student are not overloaded with information, and you can feel those real-time improvements coming little by little. And that's why Swallow Omeda is seen as one of the best sim racing coaches out there, but also as an official multi-time champion in official iRacing series, including the Porsche Cup for 2021. He does stand tall amongst coaches in terms of his word. But we also have their Race Anywhere, their web address, raceanywhere.co.uk, and Race Anywhere is the provider of curated sim racing equipment, aiming to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. We also have Demon Tweaks, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide, as found at www.demon-tweaks.com. And indeed, by going there, so no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions, whether in the simulated or real world. And then lastly, we do have Amazon, the web address amazon.co.uk, and the Amazon, of course, is the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to one-click shopping, Amazon Prime, and Amazon Web Services. But as we now look forward to next time, ladies and gentlemen, we make way from Germany to Australia for the Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit. Known more colloquially and by many as Bathurst, this circuit in round number 6 could be a game game changer for many a championship contender, because no matter how fast you are up and down the mountain can always catch you out at some point, with those walls being ever so close, and who will find a way to steer clear of the walls and drama to conquer the mountain. Find out all that and more on Sunday the 19th of February 2023, but until then, we have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain and Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.